you'd never fucking look at it again. I'll never ever touch it again. And that makes things a little bit awkward because people will sometimes be asking you about something that you've said or written about or spoken about,
Yeah, yeah.
a year
Hanging
ago.
on to the word.
And you're just like, oh
I
shit,
know, yeah,
that
yeah.
was fucking 2 years ago. I don't even agree with that anymore. Fuck.
That was an infantile disorder.
Straight in with the Lenin, and actually a very good place because we've just gone live there. If you'd believe it, so thrown straight into the deep end. Hello everybody in the chat. How are you getting on? Good to see you today. We have a fantastic comrade with us. We have Eoghan O'Neill, an author, great principled communists. And comrade, would you like to introduce yourself to the good people? Maybe you can do a better job of it than I can.
Okay.
No pressure.
Yeah, my name is Eoghan O'Neill. No pressure at all. This has got to be good. Yeah, my name is Eoghan O'Neill. Member of the Communist Party since 2009. I was elected member in 2017 at the last Congress, and member of the Dublin branch, since. And yeah, I was started off in the CYM, I suppose. But I suppose my kind of political journey wasn't. It didn't obviously start off in the Communist Party. I was working. I think it was it 2005, 2006. I was working in a book suppliers, just of putting covers on books, and I just noticed like at lunchtimes I used to be in the cafeteria or whatever that and having chats or whatever that, and I came across one of the lads who used to go upstairs kind of reading books at lunchtime. I thought that was a bit odd. Then when he left the job, I was like, oh, I went up and just had a look at the shelves, just see what was up there, and I came across Marx, and this is the first time coming across him. Like politics, for me, I never really got into it when I was in my teens. Just wasn't the friends I was hanging out with. We weren't really political. My family. I wouldn't say they were apolitical, but there wasn't. We weren't like a Labour family or Phoenix. Very much kind of kept do your own thing, and so we weren't bred with a certain politics and growing up. So when I came across, I think the first book Marx was.
Comrades, could I just stop you for 1 second there?
Yeah.
There's a slight bit of a lag with the video, so I'm assuming that there's just a little bit of an internet issue there. So do you know what I recommend that you do is that you just click on the video and you just turn off your video, and we'll just get the audio then at that stage. So we'll have the audio coming through. Yeah, perfect, and that should be a little bit better. The audio quality should improve a little bit.
Cool. Okay, so how's that?
Yeah, that sounds that sounds a little bit better there. Just the internet isn't sending as much stuff, so hopefully everything will be okay. Grant. Okay,
Right.
so let's just jump back into that there. So you were saying that you were growing up and you weren't particularly political when you were growing up, but
No. Like wasn't really part of. Like I said, we weren't any particular political family, like Republican or Socialist, Labour, Fianna Fáil, or anything like that. But I came across this book in work, and then I just started reading it. It was Marx's early writings, not the easiest one to get into, but I just started reading it. And then next to that was Marxism for Dummies. So I was like, okay, so you start off with really deep manuscripts, and then just kind of get the bare bones of what Marx was talking about. And from there, I changed jobs, managed to get a job in court service in town, Dolphin House, which happens to be next door to Connolly Books. So then again, just like at lunchtime, walking by, I noticed, there Marx in the window, or a few different books, that I kind of would have noticed, and start going in and out over the course of the year, and got chatting to people in there, and yeah, got introduced to the Communist Party that way. And kind of from the reading and getting more into it, decided to get involved. Kind of how I got connected into the Communist Party, and from there just being a member. Like I said, I joined CYM 2007, and then became a member in 2009. So that's kind of how I came across the Communist Party, and just
fair play to
political.
Fair play to comrade. Brilliant. Yeah, a lot of people do start their development within the Connolly youth movement. There's still a little bit of an issue with the internet. There's an ongoing joke on the stream that comrade Stalin often interferes with our interwebs. If you ever get off track a little bit, if you start saying something that might be a little bit ropey, a little bit revisionisty or something like that, so maybe this comrade's interfering a little bit here, but hopefully it'll be okay and we can push through all these things. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I noticed that as well. Even with the Connolly youth movement at the moment, you have young comrades who are only about fucking like 16 years old or something like that. Just even yesterday I was talking to a young comrade who's literally 16 years old. And I couldn't believe it. Like I fucking they're so advanced for that age. Like if you asked me when I was 26, I wouldn't have had the politics that they would have had at that sort of age. Because there is of course very very good educational.
Yeah, no, it's great to see. Like that's what I'm saying. Back in 2006, 2007, the teenagers when we were leaving school, it was like straight into big, jobs onto building sites or wherever that. Like,
yeah,
I think it's a totally different political landscape. And we've
that's right,
gone through one recession and we're hitting another recession now. So like these are different material conditions to when I was a teenager. So you can see people are being more educated because the reality is different. Like,
well, this is it. They need to be now. Yeah, you're seeing a massive like politicization of the youth of Ireland and across the world as a result of these conditions. The sort of the crash in 2008, 2009, and heading back into it now. It's a total disaster. And of course, these are the booms and busts of capitalism and. For people to pretend that it wasn't always like this to one degree or another, maybe it's part of a bit of an illusion, but maybe we'll come back to that sort of stuff a little bit later, leading into...
Nice hints there, yeah.
Leading into all the good stuff to come. Comrades, to everybody in the chat there, I will say that there's a lot of good stuff to come today. We're going to be talking about automation, universal basic income, artificial intelligence. We're going to be talking about how people are so tricked, lulled into these capitalistic trances, and it's going to be a very very interesting conversation. As always with these streams, if you have a question for us, we will take them throughout the stream. Just make sure to write in the chat box on YouTube at Paul Moran, and then I'll know that we should address this question there and then. Okay, so fantastic. Thanks very much for introducing yourself and for telling us a little bit about your political developments there on. That was absolutely brilliant. So tell us, alongside being a dedicated member of the Communist Party of Ireland, you're also a writer. So here we go. This is what I was talking about when I said the illusion. The spoiler there, lads.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you came to writing your recent book, The Capitalist Illusion. Now, I might just show it up on the screen there for anybody who's curious. That's The Capitalist Illusion there. You can check that out.
I designed the cover as well.
You designed the cover. A man of many talents. Come here to me. You've got about fucking 20 talents, don't you? You're a man. You're fucking an educator. You're a musician. You're a singer. You're a bassist. I think you're a part-time Queen impersonator. Is that correct? The musical act Queen.
Yeah.
Have you got the tenor? Have you the really high voice, or have you got the?
I do have to go for those high voices. Yeah, for my sins. That's one of the things I have to do.
For fuck's sake! The drummer in Queen usually wasn't he the one who did them?
He usually does it, but no, it's been given. The job has been given to me.
Jesus, yeah, you must have some fun. I'll need to sit down and listen to that one of the days. Maybe. Well, sure. Look, maybe a few drinks later on the stream we'll be able to get you to do a little bit of
good God,
Bohemian Rhapsody or something like that.
Moving on.
Swiftly moving on. All right, so on to you're an author as well. Okay, so tell me with regard to your recent book, The Capitalist Illusion, which by the way you can find a link to in the box below. You can purchase a copy of that if you're interested in Connolly Books, help the workers' movement, the communist movement, socialist movement in Ireland. Connolly Books is the Communist Party of Ireland's bookstore. It does ship internationally all over the world. Yeah. So you can grab a copy of that. I know your face is probably red with embarrassment if we could see that there, Owen. I'm very sorry to be plugging your work, but it's good stuff. It's good stuff, lads. And tell us, were you always a writer, or did something in particular, maybe some event, inspire you to publish this book?
I suppose I wouldn't be a professional writer by any stretch. But I suppose an event that kind of brought me to getting more into politics was I went to a trip over to Ethiopia in 2008, and
right.
I was working in an orphanage, just like voluntary work, working in an orphanage for 5 weeks, and like
Part-time saint.
part time.
Hashtag
So.
blessed.
So like by the end of the trip, like it was crazy, like it was a mad, experience and stuff like that, and we're all kind of chatting at the end of it, like just kind of reflecting on the whole experience, and I just thought to myself, but like, oh, what did you get from it? I just thought like, it's a life-changing experience, and if I don't change my life, I can't really say those words. So when I came back, I decided to go back as a mature student and study politics and economics. So that's what I did. Just got a degree, and that's where I kind of started to learn a bit more about structure and writing and critical analysis and stuff like that. So I really started, my writing really kind of started, I suppose. And from there, I was, when you're a member of the Communist Party, they obviously have the Socialist Voice, a great outlet for communist views. So I just started writing articles, kind of based on some of the essays I was doing in college, but then started kind of branching on my own. And then over the last, it was probably 2018, or the first article, it was on the capitalist illusion. And so when I started out, I didn't go, okay, I'm going to sit down and write this fucking book here. I just started out with a kind of concepts of I was looking at the wage system, and how that's like the system that's kind of made conscious to workers, is that they get paid, you get paid your wages, you go buy stuff, and that's the kind of the end of it. Like the nature is, you do your work, you get paid for to consume, to consume the goods that we all need to live.
CMC.
The CMC, as they say, where the capitalists have no real interest in that. Their main modus operandi is the end prime, to go from a certain amount of investment and to get profit from the end of it. And that's that infinite growth model that's embedded in the capitalist system. Really where it started off with. And then from that, I did the concept of like, okay, there's different stuff that's going on, like the idea of the state being a neutral actor. That's a perspective to keep class consciousness down. That once there's any threats to the state, that's when class power and class rule really come in. Through the army, the Gardaí or police force, the courts, and all this sort of stuff, where really when the interest of the capitalist class, i.e. the private property, the means of production, the means of generating profit, is threatened, that's when the tough arm or the iron arm fist of the state really comes out. And so as the year went on, I wrote 3 or 4 articles, all kind of around the capitalist illusion. And then one of the comrades approached, I think it was Eugene Carton, General Secretary. He just said, would you think about kind of forming these into some sort of booklet or pamphlet? I thought, yeah, I kind of had that in mind. I had maybe 6 or 7 different topics that I wanted to get covered with this heading, the capitalist illusion. And that's how it formed. And then come last November, I just said, okay, it's time. I've kind of most of the articles written. Now it's time to actually put them together, because they can't having articles that aren't linked. Is one thing, for just a pamphlet, but this was to kind of create a narrative, and that's what I spent from November till mid to late March. That was kind of nearly full time. Don't tell the boss. A lot, let's just say there was a lot of hours I was able to. yeah. So that's how it came about, and really happy that that I actually got it finished, because a lot of projects can just go by the wayside through different things. I was
Oh yeah.
absolutely delighted to get it finished and just go, okay, that's done. I can, even though, like anything, I'm always self-critical and go, Jesus, rereading it, I'll be like, oh fuck, I should have had this in, or should have changed that. I'm not happy about that. But sometimes you just have to put it down and
forget
move
about
on,
it. Yeah.
as we were saying. Forget about it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is exactly what we were talking about at the start. Just the second that's out into the public, just fucking forget about it. Just don't even bother your mind, because you could have changed this, and you may have written it, you may have done it 237 times, you may have done it 237,000 times, but maybe that 237,000 and first time would have been the correct time. Maybe that time that's when you would have got things right, and that's always what you're thinking when you're going back and reading. And that was
and that would have been on my deathbed, like when I'm fucking 60 or 70. Or however long. So so sometimes it's good to just like, okay, move on. Next
forget
project,
about
please.
it. Yeah, next Socialist Voice article, I'm gonna write about music and all that jazz and so on and so forth.
So, exactly.
Plug for another article there in Socialist Voice. You can check that
you're
out.
Good. This is not your first rodeo.
Yeah, getting smooth on these things. Said no one ever. Good stuff. Fantastic. Listen, that's great, comrade. We've had a very definitely 100% good faith question in the chat here, which you might be interested in answering. Maybe you don't want it. It's kind of a stupid question. Is Comrade Eoghan a Stalinist? Do you want to touch that? Because that actually will relate a little bit to what we're going to talk about later, I think. So do you want to touch on that a little bit now? Are you a Stalinist? Would you define yourself as a Stalinist?
No, listen, I don't think it's really helpful to go, I'm a Stalinist or I'm not a Stalinist. I think what we have to do is engage in thinking of what Stalin meant, what he was trying to do as, the leader of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union at the time, under, conditions that were, we can't even fathom, the pressures that were building on the young Soviet state, the rise of fascism. So I take a critical view of, I suppose, any leader, any movements. You have to look at what was right, what was wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one of the best books I've read was Jeffrey Roberts' Stalin's Wars. I think that gives a really good idea of the pragmatism of Stalin, and it wasn't all the fucking propaganda stuff. He was a ruthless dictator. Like he was, he listens to his generals. He listens, and he was the man at the top, and he had to make decisions that, for people living now with, oh yeah, how dare you? Why did he do this sort of stuff? But there are different times, different conditions, and I think we just have to be pragmatic ourselves in our understanding of what, who Stalin was. He's not this, monster. He was a man. He was a person in charge that was elected, and a lot of people have issues with the democracy that went on. But I think if you really get into the nitty gritty of what was going on in the Soviet Union at the time, like democracy was flourishing, but it was just the dictatorship of the proletariat democracy that was happening there, with obviously the reality of war, on the borders constantly. Like they weren't given a chance. The Soviet Union as a socialist state wasn't given a chance to actually develop how it would. But sure, no socialist state is ever going to really give the revolutionary times that we've. Revolutionary times, I mean the period of the transition of capitalism to socialism. It's not a single event. It's over the course of a long history, a long period of time. And Stalin was just one of those key figures at the time. So I wouldn't call myself a Stalinist, but I definitely defend his role as the leader of the Soviet Union. I definitely wouldn't be against a lot of decisions that he had to make. So hope that
that was
my answers.
Really, really good, thorough and principled answer. And this is someone in the chat, Solitaire, just says, "So yes, slow." In short,
Yeah, in short.
if we're to be completely undialectical about this, just straight
Yeah.
up,
Oh yeah, of
yes.
course. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I should have just said yes.
They should have just said, yeah, fucking 20 minutes later. No, I'm only
Tattoo.
messing. That was very, very good. Thank you very much, Conor. There's actually a very, very good question from Donald here. I might ask it after the next question, just so
Okay,
we
yeah.
don't get into too much of the Q&As, and we maintain our structure of the conversation.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to that question, Donald, after the next question. So listen, thanks very much, Donald. Very, very good answers there. Now, the book suggests that capitalists are fighting a war against us. The book, that is The Capitalist Illusion, that you've written. So it's the capitalists are fighting a war against us, the working class, the proletariat. Why and how does the ruling capitalist class wage war against us? Tell us about that. Why and how?
Okay, so I suppose we'll look at why first. Because, put it simply, like the world we live in, the system of capitalism is an antagonistic mode of production. On the one hand, you have people that own the means of production, and on the other, you have people that work for the means of production. And these forces cannot be reconciled because, for the like we mentioned earlier, the MCM, the M prime, this profit motive of the capitalists is to continually accumulate profit and more wealth, and that is the crux of it. And when you have workers and a working class that run the factories, run the machines, that wants to get their share for their labour, there's this antagonism. And the capitalists, who, remember, they're the ones that actually have the power. They have the power through the media, through the education system, the whole superstructure based around capitalists and the idea of private property. Which this is the rule of law, and every capitalist state has this, enshrined in their constitutions, in the law, the protection of private property. And that's ultimately why there's this class war, is because the working class want to continue take or given to them, get what's owed to them, I suppose, through their work. That's all values created through labour, and the capitalists want to continually accumulate more profit. And when you have that system, you can't reconcile them both, and that's where and why we have that class contradictions and class struggle and class war. And how that plays out is a myriad of different ways. Like I said, we're born into this world and we're just thrown onto the whatever's the system that's in play, and from starting school, from the education system, from what watch, from like I said, the laws that are enshrined. It's the whole entire superstructure that is. It's the capitalist. It's based on the capitalist mode of production, on the private ownership of the means of production, and that is to ensure that profits and wealth is generated by the workers, but is kept or is what's the word I use? It's I can't remember the word, but basically it's accumulated by capitalists. And like it's amazing when you watch like any sort of TV show. Like it could be, what's the one I was watching recently? Stranger Things, or there's another TV show, like any sort of thing that will just stick a little knife, like it's socialism or socialist states or the Soviet Union. Like they'll do it's so ingrained in culture, this anti-communism, and they need to keep this up because they know, like the capitalists and their lackeys and their spokespeople know that actually and the only political ideology that has overthrown and challenged is that socialist, communist, Marxist, Leninist ideology, and that's why on every front they will be, they'll stop nothing to disregard it, to actually refute it, to blasphemy, whatever way they can, just to ensure that the ideas of socialism, of Marx and Lenin, don't wider society. And so, like I said, it's through all the institutions of the state, through culture, through sport, through education, and that's it. That's what it is. And we have so many struggles on so many fronts, and that's why people find it difficult to actually get engaged, because there's almost a fatalistic, like, fucking hell, we can't do anything about it. But you actually can, but it's just, it takes a lot of it's a hard struggle. Like, we're up against it because we don't have the resources, we don't have the same power, in terms of wealth or anything like that. So we have to, our strength is our unity and our numbers and our politics, our understanding, our Marxist understanding of the material reality of the conditions of historical materialism. And that's for me, that's the strength of being in a communist party. There's a lot of people that are really great. They've great understanding of politics, and they're great, leaders, I suppose, of working class. But it's that kind of, without a vanguard working class party that is strong, that is militant, or that is principled, that can actually organize itself to spearhead a movement against capitalism in any setting. Without that, we're fucked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Absolutely. So that's and in one way, that's the kind of one of the reasons for the book was, it was kind of, I've kind of aimed at people that are politically aware, but it's trying to get that next step, that, like, you link up your political theory and to drive it to the next inevitable step is political action, and getting active into a political party, and what I would hope would be into the Communist Party, because I really think with the people involved, there's no better analysis of the history of capitalism, of them, and the struggles that are involved. I don't think any other party, bar the Communist Party, has that depth of analysis. So yeah, that's what I'd say there, anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good and principled answer to that. Fantastic, comrade. Thanks very much for that comprehensive answer there. Yeah, no, absolutely. There's one thing that you can't really fault the CPI on is the analysis. Excellent analysis. We sometimes do come under a bit of stick from others. People will say we're just a fucking, like, book club, because I remember, like, honestly, we don't have a massive membership. We're not like a massive, not yet anyway. We're not like a massive party, but maybe after this stream. Maybe this reaches the masses. Maybe when Xi Jinping beams this out to the masses.
Exactly.
Maybe then this will be our big make or break moment, and hopefully the comrades will make it for us. But yeah, no, we're not a massive party at the moment, and it is very hard to get sort of, even the things that we talk about, even the things that we call for, the mass movements of the workers, empowering the workers, so that the workers can take control for ourselves. That's fucking hard. We need a lot of people on our side, and of course the comrades, we're all doing a lot of what we can. And one of the things that's really fucking impressive for me about the Communist Party of Ireland is how each person I meet in the party is doing the job of about 10 fucking people. They're on about 4 or 5 different committees. Each one's a fucking, like yourself, a fucking author, a fucking Queen bass player / falsetto singer, probably a poet, an educator, a scientist, Karl Marx part-time, do you know? It's just loads of fucking, and every single person that I meet is these things. Do you know, even when I was talking to our comrade, I won't name names, obviously, just for security reasons and all that sort of thing. Even one of our comrades, like in the Socialist Voice, it's like we got talking, and he's like, yeah, I'm a professional fucking animator. Yeah, no bother. Yeah. Do you want me to help out with Socialist Voice videos? Yeah, no hassle. Yeah, I'll do a few thousand of them. And I'm like, and you're just like, what the fuck? Are you serious? Because you remember it. Just when it was just when the three of us were in that little fucking WhatsApp chat or whatever. And it's just absolutely meant every single person I meet is doing a job of about 10 different people. However, I've been in parties in the past where it's the opposite. You have about 10 people and they're doing a job of about fucking one person. And that's a massive problem. You have about 20 people who are just getting behind, fully just throwing themselves into electoral politics, not doing anything else, just trying to achieve socialism through the ballot box. And they sort of come out. Sorry, you go on. I'm gonna go off on a fucking anti-Trotskyist rant on it, and I shouldn't. I'm giving the Trots a fucking hard time. I shouldn't. I apologise. That's not the right things.
We'll leave space for that. But
that's question 7.
But you're right. It's amazing, and I think numbers is an important thing. But I think if you don't start off with a sound foundation, with a sound structure, it doesn't matter. You could have fucking 50,000 members if they aren't and fully clear of the place that they are. We don't know where in the revolutionary movement or in the revolutionary moment. But I think what each person, it's like you were saying when Trevo set up that group, that one person, those two people, all of a sudden we have resources that weren't available. When it's over the years, I had to learn Photoshop. I for a number of gigs, when I was in CYM, we set up a Work Must Pay campaign, and I think that was probably one of the most successful campaigns of recent years, because we went out and fucking made a lot of noise in front of employers that were basically underpaying workers. I think we worked out the equivalent of $3.50 an hour or something like that. So we go out and fucking absolutely give them blaze on their doorstep, and they didn't like it, but it worked. It was a really good active campaign. But in that, we'd set up socials, and I wrote a song, Work Must Pay, and I never, I'm not even though I do a bit of singing, but I'm not a singer as such, but I was like, okay, we'll do a gig, I'll bring my guitar, I'll learn a few songs, and we'll just do that. That's what went in just to the wheel. They bring their skills, and each individual person makes a difference. And as we go along, you can see people develop in their strengths, develop in confidence, and along that, I learned a lot of stuff. I'm always constantly learning, and learn new things. Even through discussions I'd have with yourself or with other comrades, there's always something that I was like, oh fuck, I never even knew about that, or I never heard about that, or I never studied that. And I think that's the wealth that you have with the party. You have great experience, you have great enthusiasm, and people willing to put in that, like I said, that extra bit of work. And it does pay off. We're not big in numbers, but we have intervened in serious political, say the right to water movement. Let's just say officially, unofficially, that campaign was it's one of the most important campaigns in recent times. But the party was one of those voices that said it's not about whether we pay charges or not. It's about public ownership. It's about the ownership of the rights to water, and put it in the constitution. And that's the difference between analysing a situation and reacting to, these fuckers are going to try and charge us for this. Yeah, okay, they can charge us, but anything is, who owns the water, and where can we develop class consciousness? And going back to our kind of team, how do we develop class consciousness? How do we get that message that the system we live in is a class-based system, and without ownership and without challenging, who owns the power, who owns our water, who owns our factories, who owns our farms, who owns our offices. If you don't challenge that, then we're fucking getting nowhere. We'll fucking debate about taxes, till the fucking sea levels rise and Dublin is gone. Like, so
this is it. Now you're 100% right, and we absolutely need to fucking expose those contradictions of capitalism to everybody, and not fall into the traps of economism and playing by the rules of the capitalist system that they've set up, that the bourgeoisie have set up, not just trying to get fucking 10 cents an hour extra for the workers, which is of course fantastic and great in the short term, and we will, throw our support behind such movements, as we're moving towards more transformative politics. But we always need to be focusing on how can we actually transform the debate, so it's not just focused on these reforms, so it actually is transformative, and absolutely, really, really good points there, Conrad. Fantastic. I kind of cut you off there, sorry. Did you want to say
no, I was done. Just, I suppose, another point in terms of interjection, like the 2008 bank guarantee, that whole bailout, that whole saga, like, the Communist Party, again, with clear analysis, said, like, a lot of parties are saying, this is wrong. What we called for was the repudiation, which is a legal term in terms of rejecting that this debt doesn't actually belong to the people. It was an odious debt that, private developers, private banking system, for their own, vested interests, but then was, I think it was like 2.5 times of GNP, 325 billion of liabilities were put on the Irish people, 42,000 euro per head, roughly, of debt was put on the Irish citizen, every Irish citizen. And, these debts are still, like, this hasn't gone away. And so that idea of debt repudiation, rejecting, because we can't forget, when we're talking about all this sort of stuff, we're still paying fucking billions on interest alone, and we still have billions still to be paid. There's tranches happening every year, 2-3 billion, being paid back on mature bonds, and this is stretched back to 2050. Like, we're and as more debt comes in the next austerity 2.0. This is perpetual debt, and how is this capitalist state who are they going to punish? Fucking the workers, the main taxpayers, that pay into the coffers of this state. And when that money is having to be siphoned off and paid for these bankers or hedge funds or whoever they are, comes out of education, housing, welfare, all different government agencies, and we've seen it all over the country, and we've seen the effects of it through emigration, through suicide, through mental health issues, increasing all the time. So this is the reality, like, and that's, again, if we're not conscious of the class realities, then we'll always just debate about the trimmings, not about the actual fucking cake.
Yeah, fantastic answer there, Conrad. Thanks very much. And we're gonna return to this class focus and class consciousness and false consciousness and all this, and internationalism as well, in a moment. I think now might be a good time to return to the question we had beforehand from the chat there. So this is Donald's question. This is Donald's question for you, Eoghan.
Okay.
Donald said, for you specific, on the spot now. We haven't prepared one for this, so this is a bit harder.
Fuck's sake.
I love that. People in the chat box were like, what the fuck does fuck's sake mean? Fuck's sake, what the fuck? I don't know. Probably internationally that sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? For the sake of fuck. Anyway, alright, so this is what Donald said. Owen made a good point about the state's supposed neutral, in quotes, position vis class struggle as a way of creating consent. Okay, does he think that socialist states could have also tried to appear non-political too. So you're living in the USSR, you're living under Stalin. Does Stalin, does the whole system try to create a situation where this isn't political, this is just the way things are, there is no alternative?
Yeah.
or do we think there's a proletarian culture there, a class conscious and politically aware group? What do we think?
I definitely think there is a much more class conscious, whereas in socialist states that they, because it's built into their education system, because it's in their interests to actually understand class, and because of capitalists and capitalist mouthpieces through media and different institutions, that they've had to, and I suppose a lot of it would be through education in the Communist Party, and the Communist Party being a mass party. Now, what I would say is, I without having really thought about the question, I would say, after, say, Stalin, and we're talking about Khrushchev, I do believe that kind of political and class consciousness and class development was stunted. I don't think. I think, I think that had some way, part of the reason why disillusion and the dismantling of the social state happened, because it did that level of class development and understanding the historical nature and historical role of the working class of, I suppose, of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, that they didn't feel that ownership. And I think that's one of the failings. And like everything, it's something to learn from that. We can't, just because a revolutionist succeeds and things go into state ownership, public ownership, doesn't mean you take the foot off the wheel of political theory. In fact, it needs to be even more so. Like, we need more engagements, more study, more analysis of the class forces, because yourself, like, the transition isn't going to be a black and white, red or blue. Everyone, as soon as we're socialists, say everyone's on board. No, there's going to be a whole transition and a whole customs take a lot of time to work themselves out. So you're going to have people not ready for the transition. So that's the importance of political education and the need to maintain that. And I do believe that socialist states that, like, say, Cuba, that they do fully engage, and that there is an understanding. And I don't think they are being under no illusion that their state is run by the Communist Party is the main political party, but that doesn't mean they're the only political players within the Cuban government. That's not the case. There's people can become politically active and become members of the government without being in the Communist Party of Cuba. So I think I do think it's different for socialist states, and I don't think they're under the same illusions as us living in capitalism or under capitalist governments, capitalist countries.
Yeah, no,
so
really,
that answers the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and really, really good point. Because as we always say, I mean, the class struggle doesn't end in socialism. In fact, the class struggle intensifies under socialism. And that's really, really key to remember. Watching the development of the USSR, from the 1920s up to the 1940s, 1950s, there's some brutal stuff in there. There's some really, really heavy stuff in there.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. I'm tempted to meme about the kulaks deserving it, but anyway. Sorry.
But no, I was going to say, Stalin's text, the economic problems of the USSR, is a vital text to understand how class forces play to transition, and it doesn't end the day after the revolution. It only begins. Full stop.
Say that again. It begins when? Just say that again. It just cut out for a second there. Stalin was a bit skeptical about what you were going to say. Just say it again. Oh, hang on,
So
comrade.
say
I apologize now. The internet's just
it
cutting out.
doesn't. It,
The internet's just cutting out a little bit there. I think you're saying something that's fairly anti-Stalin, so
just say
you're getting properly just chopped out, just gone. Just give it a second there. Just give it a second there to calm down, and then we'll return to that question in a second. It sounds like okay. So
he just points out that
okay, go on, give it a go there now, and let's see how it goes.
you can sort of need to maintain. I think it was in the 1930s. Can you hear that?
I can hear you now, finally. Yeah, a moment of clarity.
Yes.
Stalin has regained faith.
Okay. That's because I was actually.
Oh, Jesus Christ. This is some purge stuff right here now, lads. We'll have to fucking write this out of history. I'll have to fucking go into YouTube studio and just fucking clip this part of the video. Wow, that's what I'm gonna have to do after this. Didn't happen. Don't worry about it. I'm not a fucking revisionist. Don't worry about it. Comrade, your internet.
Oh crap!
It's going a bit there. I'll be honest now. It's going a little bit. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, I can.
Could you hear me talking shy over you then? That must have been very fucking rude.
Oh, very, very rude.
Well, I'm very sorry for being such a rude bastard.
No, I'm only joking.
You're sorry.
Is that any better?
It actually is a little bit better, yeah. It actually is a little bit better. I think we might be clear to try this again, to try and answer that question again there. All right. So anyway, you were saying that Stalin's class. Continue.
Okay, we're leaving at this one because I can't do it again.
Take 25.
No, I was just saying the economic problems of the USSR. When he wrote that, it just shows after 20, 30 years of socialism in the USSR that there were still major problems that had to deal with. And just say that when the revolution succeeds, that's where like the struggle for building socialism begins. It's not building up to the revolution. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, very, very good. Fantastic. Thank you very much, comrade, for addressing all these fantastic questions and also our sort of on the go questions from the chat. Great stuff. Okay, so let's return to the questions that we had written down beforehand that we have some prepared answers for. Let's return to this idea of class consciousness versus false consciousness, and also talking about capitalism and imperialism as international systems rather than just purely, country by country systems. Okay, so let's jump into this. This is question 4 now on the document. I'm not sure if you can see that. So listen, one often overlooked element of false consciousness, okay, is the lack of an understanding of imperialism, that is the highest stage of capitalism or monopoly capitalism, as a global system. Okay, instead people often view it on a country by country basis. We see this manifesting in puritanical debates over whether this or that country is socialist, despite not having abolished the value form, rather than questioning whether or not that country is contributing positively to the international proletarian fight against imperialism. And you can see examples of that in countries like, for example, Venezuela. Actually, not even Venezuela. Well, yeah, Venezuela as well. But Nicaragua is a good example of this. Whether or not you want to consider Nicaragua a socialist country might be questionable, but it's undeniable that it's an anti-imperialist country. So talk to us a little bit more about how low levels of class consciousness regarding the global proletarian struggle damage our movement.
Yeah, hopefully now we'll get a clear signal because
sounds good now.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Okay. I feel a bit more confident now. I think this is one of the things, and it kind of manifests itself in politically in different forms in different countries. Like let's take the example of Corbyn or Sanders in the US.
Yeah, very
You
good.
know, a lot of these, you know, say their political manifestos are very progressive, and you know, you can't fault a lot of them.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of what they're domestically, what they're trying to achieve. You know, it's not all out class struggle, class war declaration of the dictatorship of the proletariat, but you know, any state that had those type of policies, you know, you'd say that would be a positive, it would be a progressive state. Where the fundamental weakness is, and this is of any social democratic movement or left, quote unquote, left political party, is their failure to understand the global nature and the sheer aggressiveness and the need for imperialism, to, like we're saying, the highest stage of capitalism, to control and direct you know, the global infrastructure of goods, of transport, of resources, you know, and you know, the idea of we're not even talking about socialist states here. We could be talking about states that just want a form of independence. That is, you know, if they're going against the capitalist, the imperialist powers of the US for their own whatever self-interest, but not a socialist interest, it's not going to be tolerated, because they're not going to. That we need to again, let's go back to the idea of this infinite accumulation of wealth, of profit, this end prime that is ceaseless and endless. And when a country has certain resources and they do not allow access to these resources, or they do not allow the companies of these nations access to run or to mine or to companies under their jurisdiction, then it's not going to be tolerated. So you don't even have to have a socialist policy to fucking come under the crosshairs of imperialist nations. And we see this in the Middle East. We see this in Latin America.
Yeah.
We see it in Eastern Europe, like what happened in Ukraine 2015 with the whole Maidan, and in Belarus, what's happening there is this idea that you have to fucking own, control regions, geopolitical regions that are strategically important for the control and the ownership of the resources. And we're talking about oil, we're talking about gas, we're talking about precious metals, you know, forest, water, minerals, all these sort of stuff that keep that system of accumulating and producing commodities in the interests of the capitalist class. And that's where, like, you see, and when we go back, when we're talking about the Trotskyist movement, that's their fucking
here we go.
their Achilles heel. That's their Achilles heel. They go out and support, like, fucking you know, these, what they call, this is the real working class. Not realizing that you destabilize a government that has popular support. You destabilize their whole transport system, you know, their electricity grids, their plumbing, like, you know, the whole infrastructure gets, and this really impacts on the lives of you know, millions of people across the globe. And for them not to see this, I have to go, well, what's going on here? What is their role here? And you know, the more skeptic or pessimist person with me is like, they're fucking paid lackeys of the imperialist order. But you know, you can't.
I totally understand. I mean, like, look, the fucking thing, they support every fucking revolution except for the revolutions that have been successful. Do you know what I mean? And it's this fucking thing over and over again. No matter what it is, you're revolting in the streets. If people are hitting the streets, it's good. It doesn't matter who's backing it. It doesn't matter how much money.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the fact that you've received millions and millions of dollars from the National Endowment for Democracy, which is a CIA offshoot that was formed under Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. By the way, Google that, National Endowment for Democracy. It doesn't matter that you're receiving all this money. It doesn't matter that the people in Belarus are receiving all this money. It doesn't matter that the people in Hong Kong are receiving all this money. The people in Syria, even going back to Yugoslavia, the people are receiving all this money from the National Endowment for Democracy, and the CIA before they had this front group. It doesn't that doesn't matter. That's not important. The important thing is that the people are rising up and revolting. It's not like these people are being led by people who've been paid off by Western imperialists. No. The important thing is that there's people on the streets, and that's all that matters. And it's a totally unprincipled and an opportunist position to take, and we see this as well, particularly now with the Belarus movements. Would you mind touching a little bit about on your perspective on the situation in Belarus at the moment? We did have a question about this actually, and I will just read it out because it's relevant to what we're talking about. Michael Hall asked, with the theme of this question, what is Owen's opinion on Belarus? Where we see a lot of, quote, leftists jumping on board with the neoliberal right in that country. And it's, of course, worth keeping in mind what the Communist Party, who do have a majority share of the government, has said as well with regard to this, of course, giving support to the state in Belarus at the moment. So do you have any thoughts on that, Conrad? And do you want to maybe share them in a little bit more detail? Now, don't go into it too much because we're going to have a proper deep dive, in-depth episode next Tuesday. We're going to have the General Secretary from the Connolly Youth Movement, and we're going to properly dive into it then and really take it apart and stuff like that, and see what's going on from a principle perspective, not just jumping into for, against, or anything like that. We're going to properly dive into it. But do you have any initial thoughts and maybe a little taster for what you're thinking about what's going on there at the moment?
Yeah. I think it's hilarious that you could write the script of how that's played out. In fact, the script has been written umpteen times and has been played out umpteen times in different regions of the world. But we're talking about a state where you have still a large amount of public ownership of the factories, the resources, and obviously it's a geoimportance because it's further encroaching on the borders of Russia. It's not just because damn Russians are interfering in elections, but it's because they see them as, especially with China and Russia having a geopolitical force, that it's NATO, encroaching in and bringing forces closer to the borders. But it's this, why now? I believe it's probably part of a strategic plan, like before, or was it before or after 9/11, in terms of the countries that the US had its crosshairs on. And I believe this is probably just one of those regions where now it's time to destabilize. Let's put in this fucking opposition figures and have, what's that? Is it Radio Europe? Or
Radio for Europe. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And getting full airplay all over Western news media outlets and forming the narrative. And this is what we're talking about. This whole the capitalist illusion. Let's go back to that topic. That it's
creating the narrative.
It's creating
reality
and control. I like it, Paul. You're on fire.
It's a vodka.
But that's
burning my throat. Burning my soul, my socialist soul.
Oh man, it's on fire. But that's it. Like it's controlling and directing the narrative, and this gets fed in, and that's what really bothers me about so-called leftist movements that are just parroting the imperialist narrative, and not questioning why would not, go against, oh, hold on, this is big Yankee imperialism. These have a strategic interest here to destabilize this region.
Yeah.
But we're still going to, come out in for the workers, the real working class that are absolutely have their throat stamped on by
socialists.
Yeah. The real socialists.
Yeah. We know all too well about the real socialists, the true socialism. Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ. Fucking Parenti. I'll have to get Parenti on the stream next week. Yeah. All right, boys.
Oh, legends.
2 weeks from now, Parenti's coming on. He gave me a buzz.
Actually, Parenti was like, when we were talking about Queen, I travel up and down the country, and so like late at night or whatever, going up and down, and I always have Parenti or different Marxist lectures on. It's a great way to study when you're on the move, when you're driving. Just listen to all this sort of stuff. And you're like, there's a few different channels, like yourself, another Radical Reflections. These types of platforms are giving voice to what we never had before. Sincerely, like. Thanks for like you
fucking stop, would you? Jesus, that's the fucking alcoholic again. All right, boys, fucking everybody in the chat there, time to fucking log out. Now we'll be telling each other we love each other, and fucking we'll be cuddling through the airwaves.
No, I hate
you. Yeah, come on, Sorry. All right, so you're cruising down the roads, listen to Parenti.
Parenti is, you take a lot of inspiration from these, from a lot of these speakers, a lot of these academics or political activists, because you have to. I fundamentally believe you have to take in a lot of different views, different voices, and mush that in and try and reflect and internally digest all this sort of stuff, because yourself, Paul, there's 101 different topics, 101 different subjects that we're expected to understand, we're expected to have a clear analysis of.
At all times, yeah.
At all times, yeah. So.
What about China?
So,
200 billion people have died in the name of communism, and you uphold that? What the fuck?
That's a question, yeah.
Moving on to question 5 now. What about the 17 billion people who've died in the name of communism? Just purely at the hands of Stalin's, the left side of Stalin's mustache. Anyway, sorry. I interrupted you there. You're getting inspired by these left-wing voices, and
no, I'm just saying it's that's why it's hugely important for these platforms to get these views out there, and as a plug to you, like, I know it's important. This is a great vehicle or avenue to get our perspectives and left-wing communist socialist perspectives out there, so hats off to you. You've done a great job, so I'll leave it at that. There you go.
Oh, Jesus. Now, see, the problem is you're hiding now. I know that you fucked up your internet so that people wouldn't have to see you during the stream, so they wouldn't have to see you blush when I was complimenting you, when I was shouting out your book, when I was telling people to go over to Connolly Books and to buy your book, and they'll sell it all over the world to you. No bother. You don't need to be in Ireland. You don't need to fucking drive into Dublin City Centre and talk to Big Eugene, Chairman Eugene, our General Secretary. You don't need to sit down and talk to our comrade. No, you can get it. You could be in fucking India, or you.
I'll sign your copy. I'll sign your fucking copy.
And we'll sign it to you, and we'll send it to you, and you even kiss it. Put a little bit of fucking cologne on it. Get the proper Eoghan O'Neill smell on the book. The real authentic experience. Maybe you do a little bit of audio recording for them. Maybe some one-to-one interviews. And all right, we're going down a weird path here. So let's get back on track. What was I saying before we got into the weird, almost erotica kind of stuff? This is it. I'm blushing now because I'm on camera, and you're complimenting me. I feel weird about it, so let's fucking.
We'll move on. Typical Irish. Any sort of compliments, we're gone. No, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with this.
I can't fucking take it. I can't take it. This is it. This is the fucking post-colonial mentality. We can't fucking take it. We just fucking say sorry all the fucking time. This is it. This is what happens when you're a colonized country. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Anyway, we could talk about that for fucking years. Come here to me. All right, let's go ahead and push on. Really, really good answers there. And I think just to be brought out of this, it's really important to people in the chat there. Don't understand capitalism as just as a national thing. A lot of I think this is a massive issue with people who are new to the left and are finally understanding the problems with capitalism. Maybe they're working some shitty job. They're working in McDonald's. They're working in some shitty place where they're just being exploited like crazy, and they're really noticing all the problems with it. And they feel it. They feel the problem in their bones, being for the first time. Maybe they're just out of school. Maybe they're working a part-time job while they're in school, something like that. And so they challenge capitalism on a local level. And they want to overcome capitalism on a local level. And maybe they take it to the next step, they take it to a regional level. Maybe if you're in like the US or something like that, maybe it's like a state level. If you're in a smaller country, maybe it's like a national level. And you want to achieve socialism on that national level. And so you sort of resort to things like cooperatives. If we just stop doing capitalism, if we just stop doing capitalism in our day-to-day lives, then problem solved. And it's the same sort of mentality that leads to a lot of liberal solutions to these kinds of problems. This sort of individual responsibility. Me and my mates will start a co-op and problem solves. Do you know what I mean? And of course, yeah. Rose Luxemburg dealt with this quite thoroughly in Reform or Revolution, for anyone who's interested in the question of worker cooperatives. But basically, in absence of a larger socialist movement or under a proper socialist system, really it gets you about as far as being a vegan does. Do you know what I mean? It can, of course, train you in certain skills. It can teach you, look, this is how proper worker self-management works. This is how workers organize themselves. Good stuff. But again, if that's not being worked out at a proper societal collective level, then you're not really advancing conditions for everyone else. You're just making yourself feel better, which is unfortunate. And this is a problem that we see time and time again, and people are just fucking obsessing over this and that country and saying, is this country socialist? Is that country socialist? Has it achieved the goal? And of course, it's a totally undialectical approach. We're not really understanding socialism as a process when we talk about it this way. We're not really looking at imperialism as a global system and its tentacles as they reach across the world. And we absolutely need to. If you really want to understand capitalism, you need to understand it as a global system. Monopoly capitalism as a global system. Of course, you need to read your fucking Lenin. You need to read you need to read Marx. You need to read all the boys, and sometimes and the girls, and non-binary and non-binary comrade. All the genders. Put them all in there, whatever they may be. Non-genders, agender, I don't know. I don't know. I always have to fucking put a little asterisk beside anytime I talk about gender or any of the LGBTQ plus issues. I always have to put a little asterisk beside it that says I don't have a fucking clue what I'm talking about. But I'm trying my best to help and to accommodate lots of people.
So it's okay, Paul. It's okay. Yeah, we can move on.
Hopefully people get that. Anyway, yeah, you need to understand it as a global system at all stages, and understanding it purely as a national system or a regional system or an individual system, to say you're not a capitalist or you're not doing capitalism in your country, that's fundamentally another form of false consciousness. Again, okay, so we need to understand capitalism as an epoch, that needs to be overcome. We need to move on to the next stage in societal development, And yeah, that's what I wanted to really add to that conversation. Do you have any thoughts on what I said there? Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm incorrect.
No. Like I think what we can be harsh about is like, listen, if people are out and they're angry about the system, whether that's because your local council doesn't have the money or whatever it is, that you just have to look at your local. I think what we have to realize is that people enter into a struggle through a myriad of different ways. It's not always in the workplace. It's not always that capitalist free workers forum that got to that cauldron where it becomes very much so very clear lines. I think people have different issues, and like you say, different identity politics being much more prominence in politics than there were, previously. But you have to embrace people's journey, and you have to embrace where they're coming from.
Yeah, this is it.
But also, you can't be, I suppose, go down like a cul-de-sac, because every issue you can always bring it back to the fundamental level of, class ownership, the ownership of wealth and how it's directed. How can an economy plan to ensure that the rights of different peoples, of different, are satisfied, that we have the idea of, collective ownership, and culturally and in a communal type of fashion, that we're connected, that we have, that everything that we do is social, and we have all these this understanding, and it's social in terms of a local, regional, national, and international level. Like, it's all connected. This stuff we're talking through technology that we didn't, but it's a whole host of different areas, different materials, different resources that have to come together to put this like a laptop in front of me, and all the different bits of technology that you use. That this is part of a struggle to understand that it isn't, like you said, like, it's important that we understand the local issues, but that there is a global system, and that global system is there to control these resources in the interests of those that own and that can extract this wealth through the exploitation. And that's what we're talking about here. It's the exploitation. It's not just that they get it because they deserve it. They fucking exploit the global working class, and super exploit the global working class of the global south. Have to, and that's part of the thing. We are alienated from that reality, and that's why people are saying that cold face. Your boss and you as your worker, they don't see the cold face of imperialism, of the damage that's happening, not just to the global working class, but to the environment, and all the fucking issues that we haven't even touched on, but are integral to the whole thing. To the depletion of our resources for that. Let's go back to the M prime, that drive to accumulate, and that's there's no end for the accumulation other than the finite resources. But in terms of the process of capitalism, and we don't even have to worry about individual capitalists. A capitalist will be replaced by another capitalist. It's the system that is the problem, not the individuals. Certain people are fucking assholes or like super exploiters. Some people may be, philanthropists or whatever that. But the idea is, it's a system. It's a global system of imperialism, of monopoly ownership, of finance and industry coming together to control and direct and exploit the working class and the resources of the world. And that's what we have to continue to drive home to people that are really angry about the system and the world that they live in, but don't make that final connection. And that's the job and the work of communists and others on the left to join up all those dots.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. And you talk about it actually as well on page 34, 35 of your book there. You said that it's hypocritical to fight for justice, equality, democracy, or a fairer distribution of wealth at home if we're happy to exploit, plunder, and ravage the peoples of other nations. Which is, I think, is particularly relevant to people who, in the Western left in particular, put a lot of hope in... This is going to sound very critical, but people who are essentially left imperialists, whose foreign policies are very, very harmful to people in the developing world. To not in their countries, do you know what I mean? And you touched on them a little bit as well. You touched about Bernie Sanders and so on and so forth, so sort of social democratic people. But if we don't understand it as part of a larger global system, then again, this is just another example of false consciousness. We think we understand it. We think we get it. We just need things to be better here, and the workers just need to be paid better, and we just need free healthcare, and then problem solved for everyone. But of course, problem isn't solved for everyone. There's still people. There's still people in fucking Bangladesh. The gains of the workers' movement in the developed world, in the first world, are made on the backs of the super exploited workers in the developing world, the third world, in Bangladesh, and historically China, and a number of other different countries. So that's a massive problem, and it's a massive blind spot as well for a lot of people on the left, and a lot of, I suppose, and I obviously don't want to call out other people, especially non-ML or non-MLM tendencies, where maybe they just don't understand these global issues. But look, this is all in the book. If you're curious to learn a little bit more about this, then go ahead, just pick up a copy of Capitalist Illusion from your finest bookstore. Available at all good bookstores.
Infomercial.
Little break here. This is where I just showed a little cartoon or something. But yeah, no, it is really important. And I think it's also interesting to talk about as well, because in the context of Ireland, we often call ourselves like. We would embrace the nationalist tradition, the republican tradition, that is to say, the national liberation, the left nationalist tradition within Ireland and places like that. And I've gotten called out for that a few times by people. I've gotten called out for that like a few times by people in Imperial Cores. Fucking people on Twitter and stuff like that with little rows in their name, and they blew vote Bernie, and I'm like, mate. Do you understand the role he has played in US foreign policy? And yeah, of course, sometimes he's voted against imperialist funding, but there have been other times where he was very much on the side of Western imperialism. And so there's a weird dichotomy there between nationalism and internationalism, and there's people sort of saying that they're internationalists, but they're not actually being internationalists, And as communists, as socialists, we need to be internationalists. We may be nationalists as well in the colonial context, and there may be some or post-colonial context as well in some cases, but we need to be internationalists as well, and people need to really put their money where their mouth is in these situations and actually show it. Do you know what I mean?
I think as well, Paul, that we, not to disagree, but I think say the likes of Sanders or Corbyn, we have to kind of, as communists, evaluate how can class consciousness develop under these policies, under these leaders, and if we see them as progressing class consciousness, I think there's an onus to have some critical support.
Of course,
yeah. You know what I mean? I think if we're to shove everyone in as the enemy, we're not going to get those alliances. And what we have to understand is, because most communist parties now, like in the 21st century, 2020, they're small. Like, and it's not just Ireland; it's Western communist parties. We have to win the hearts and minds of the broad population. There's no point going fucking gung ho with this beautiful dream of going up in a tank in O'Connell Street with the AK-47 and going, fucking we're the revolutionaries, fuck yeah.
Bit of adventurism in the house, sure, why not?
Yeah, if we did that, you'd be fucking, first of all, laughed out, and just like, okay, it wouldn't have the support. And that's, what we have to do is, and this is where, like, the fine line between supporting different policies and being reformist, that's where you have to really understand the politics of that to avoid that, because that's a problem that was there in the early 1900s in Russia. What forces can you use at a certain point of time for the benefit of driving the class struggle, driving the class forward, and they're all interesting debates. We don't have those particular, the standards, but we do have, like, I'm not endorsing or anything like this, but I'm just saying the likes of Sinn Féin, how do we analyse their position as opposition parties in Ireland? Because they're, like, let's face it, the Trotskyists aren't in any way going to take over power. Sinn Féin possibly have a chance to form government, but then once you get into that club, my dissertation in college was the cartel political party system, that once you get into the folds, unless you have that radical break away from the EU, from the system, you will be part of the cartel system. Over time, you'll just develop into another establishment political party, and that's what Sinn Féin members, left Sinn Féin members have to, be aware of and be wary of, because once you enter into that swamp of electoral politics and that being your main focus, and not developing class consciousness, it's only going down that reformist, that cartel political line. So they're all dangers, and they're all struggles, and they're all part of our material reality that we have to deal with. That we don't have this vacuumous, like Lenin said, we don't have fucking the working class on one side and the capitalists on the other. It's like it's class loyalties and class strata intermingle, and it's about winning the hearts and minds of them through direct critical analysis, direct clear political programs as well. I suppose for someone else, you need to have a clear political program. So just to kind of that endorse what we're saying here is like, without that internationalist, without understanding imperialism, without understanding the global system, we're fucked. We're going down a one-way route.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and you will find it as well. You will find that with a lot of these organizations, parties that are sort of centre left, they're falling into the trap of electoralism. They'll pay lip service to it. They'll pay lip service to imperialism. They will talk about, especially in the context of Ireland anyway, they'll especially talk about British imperialism. There's a bit of confusion between colonialism and imperialism. They're definitely not. In many cases, they're not really talking about Lenin's theory of imperialism as we would understand it, which is a big problem, I suppose, within the Republican movement in Ireland, and it's something that I think communists and principled socialists really need to be shining light upon. And unfortunately, it's something that a lot of the Trotskyist parties are, despite saying they're doing that, they're actually failing to do that as well, which is a massive problem as well. And as you said, they're falling into the traps of electoralism, where rather than using the electoral bourgeois parliamentary electoral system as a way of amplifying proper transformative working class voices who actually want to bring about revolution, they're just getting a few people elected and then fighting to retain their seats, just trying to hold ground, and rather than going into an election and saying, this is great, look, I can get a few interviews, in magazines, I can put forward a proper revolutionary perspective on these issues. No, they're saying no, I'm just going to do this interview and try to get myself elected, and they're falling into the exact same trap because they need to, because the system's set up in such a way that they absolutely need to fall into these things. And so you can enter into this system, sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and think that no, I'll be different. I'm going to be different. I'm going to be a true revolutionary. I'm going to enter parliament. I'm going to be a true fucking revolutionary. But the system necessitates it, So, and fundamentally, this idea that you will go in and you will be the different one, you're going to be the changing factor, it's fundamentally idealist. It fundamentally doesn't understand the material conditions which give rise to such ideas, attitudes, positions, and so on and so forth. You may think the power of your will and the power of your mind and your ideas and your commitment and your purity and your dedication and devotion to socialism and to communism will be enough to enact a true socialist revolution through a bourgeois parliamentary system. However, the material reality will prove that to be otherwise, and we need only look at the history of Eurocommunism. Quote Eurocommunism to fucking see that in practice, where you did actually have a number of communist parties which had fairly solid support across a number of different countries in imperialist cores and so on. In France, in Greece in particular, of course, is a massive support, and that's an interesting one as well. Maybe a slightly different situation as well, and we can look at the KKE and stuff like that, and there's probably a slightly different position that they're taking, and that is very interesting and could develop in a very interesting way. But can
I just add there, when we're talking about this, I think one of the fundamental, when we're talking about a misunderstanding or either consciously or unconsciously of imperialism and its global sphere. It's the issue of the EU, and that's where a lot of political parties, falter in terms of not understanding the dynamics and the actual what's the treaties for, I can't think of the word, but like the treaties, the enshrinement of capitalism as the only system that can function under EU laws. And so a lot of, maybe critical, but ultimately they see the EU as, you work within the system, you reform it. But there's no reform in the EU because its very nature is a capitalist ideology. It was a bulwark against socialism. Its treaties enshrined capitalism and outlawed individual members moving towards a socialist path. So, if we accept, if we're talking about fucking socialism and whatever parties say, no, we want public ownership of housing, of hospitals, of education, and yet we'll do this under the EU. We won't even bring up that issue. We'll just say this is our manifesto. This, and a lot of parties put this shit in their manifesto and then don't actually highlight, well, I'm actually pro EU. Like they think, like, again, another illusion that you can fucking bring about these, the watchword of tonight, that you can bring about these changes, within the EU as the European embodiment of imperialism. It just can't be done. Because it's not set up for reform, and that's simply it. Like,
and it's illegal.
And we look at
it's so important. It's so important to highlight this point, because even the fucking most milk toasts of, like, we can't even say reforms with regard to COVID, with COVID-19, and with governments exercising control over what had been privatised hospitals and so on within Ireland and within other countries. For the government to take control of these, to control them for a little while, not even to properly nationalise or anything like that, that would have been illegal according to EU law. They had to actually fucking change the laws or relax the laws in order to make this a possibility. And people just don't understand that. It's fucking ridiculous. And you have the Social Democrats saying, "Oh, we're all socialists now. Look at this. The government's nationalised all these hospitals." And me arse, it has. It fucking hasn't. It's still paying these private capitalists all the money for them. It hasn't brought them under state ownership at all. But even what it has done, the tiny little bit that it has done, would have been fucking illegal. The most modest of social democratic reforms are still illegal under the European Union. And of course, for people in the chat, I just will say before you jump back in, for people in the chat who are curious to learn a little bit more about the European Union and imperialism and Brexit and all these sorts of things, I will be doing a chat about that, a proper live stream interview about that, with Dave Swanson from Radical Reflections. Around the start of September, so we'll dive into that subject in much more detail at that stage. By the way, our comrade Owen, who's on the stream tonight, will be appearing on that show soon as well. So another bit of a fucking plug there as well, which you'll have to pop into the description box after this is over.
I love the cross-pollination here.
We gotta do what we can. We're fucking poor. What the fuck? I got no money. We need to do anything we can to help the situation out, help out the workers of the world. Community. All right. So lost train of thought, but basically gist of it was EU crap.
EU
very capitalist.
Yeah.
We don't need to be dialectical about it. Just fuck the EU.
But it's important. I just say it's important to stress that that is, we live. Ireland isn't an independent sovereign nation, say if it ever was, but it isn't anymore. So we have to, be out front and not fucking mess around with this. Is one of the most important questions. Our membership of the EU and our adoption of the euro currency, and obviously we have. So this is imperialism in Ireland, foreign direct investments. The occupation of the 6 counties by the British state. So this is what we would, in the Communist Party, have, labelled the triple imperialist block of US, EU, and UK imperialism, and this is them. This is their how they enforce or of their policies of whatever they're doing in Ireland. That's how they manifest through the use of Shannon foreign direct investments, through the membership of the Euro and the EU, and through the occupation of the six counties. So these are all struggles that we have to, like I said, win the hearts and minds of the people against, membership, against the Euro, against the use of Shannon and other areas for warplanes, against the occupation of British colonialism. So, there's 100, like I said, there's 101 different struggles taking place, and I suppose the idea of the Communist Party is that we look to where imperialism is weakest, try to drive a wedge, split the power and the hot grip of imperialism in Ireland. So yeah, just to reinforce what we're talking about there.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I'm not going to jump into that too much because I'll be talking about this for fucking hours and hours and hours with Dave Swanson.
Yeah, we'll leave it there.
When he jumps on, but yeah, really, really good points, and I appreciate the comprehensive answer there. Yeah, this is we're just going off talking about everything. This is deadly, great crack, great fun. All right.
I'm on my last beer.
You're on your last beer. Jesus Christ, you need to fucking stock up, head down. Yeah. I heard there's a delivery, like a takeaway for cans in Dublin, Irish Simpson Group. So they'll deliver you a few cans if you need them. Yeah, hopefully that'll get the job. We've had a question in the chat, which is I think is quite interesting. I'm not 100% sure if this is sort of. I'm not sure if you've read this text. It's kind of related to Sakai settlers and so on and so forth. Deadman Animations asks, can you ask your guest about settler colonies and their place in the capitalist regime? I feel like a lot of people have zero analysis of settler colonialism. Which, if I may say a few words first, I think it's a very interesting question, because in Ireland, we often don't think about things in these terms, but it absolutely maps on perfectly. If you look at the colonies that happened in the six counties, Ulster, the Ulster plantation in the 1600s, a lot of Scots came over. They were given lands taken away from the indigenous Irish people, and so this is created. As Sakai would have said, a kind of labour aristocracy within the working class, which is thrown up a lot of contradictions within the country. Now, whether or not those contradictions are antagonistic is another issue which needs to be discussed in detail and solved at another point. Personally, I am reading the book Settlers at the moment. I'm only 4 or 5 chapters into it, so I can't give a proper analysis of it. I've heard that there are some third worldist kind of implications of what's discussed in terms of, let's say, the so-called proletariat of the first world, the white proletariat, what we're talking about, maybe a labour aristocracy, not really having any true revolutionary potential in, for example, places like the United Kingdom, the United States, and so on and so forth. And we should really be looking to places in the global south, the developing world, and so on and so forth. Look, I'll have to get there, and I'll probably end up doing a proper stream discussing this in detail at some stage. Comrade, I'm interested to know what you hear on. Do you know much about this? Have you given any serious thought to it? And you can probably talk about it within our own context, maybe touch on the US context as well. But definitely within Ireland, we can talk about the divisions between loyalist Republicans or Catholics and Protestants, but we know that's not actually about religion. But do you want to maybe touch on this?
Yeah, I haven't read that book Settlers myself, and so I'll answer as best I can. But more so on the whole idea of what you're talking about, the labour aristocracy. I think there's some truths to that the working class of the global north have, let's say, a cozy relationship. I wouldn't say cozy because that's not fair, because there's we're also, it's different. It's like relative and absolute poverty. Like it's your material conditions. You can't apologize for the world you're grown up or you're born into. Like it's just luck of the draw. And I think it goes back to our idea of without that understanding of international the how the system works, and uses those people, and like within trade unions, within left groupings or social democratic youth, they use them to totally undermine, weaken, working class communist movements. And I think that's that's a reality that we have to, that it can be unsettling, and it can be hard to, and I touch on this in the book in terms of it can be hard to stomach for communists or anyone within the left to grapple with the idea that, like, our social programs are based on this fundamental exploitation of the working class of the global south. You know what I mean? So there is issues with it, but I don't think that should really stop us from organizing, stop us from trying to. It's been conscious of it and known that it exists, but we have to struggle within our own confines, and that's just going back to what I said at the start in terms of why I kind of decided to get active in politics rather and to go back and study. Is you can't just go off on it, like just be this mad volunteer, like I'm going to Africa because I feel great about myself and I'm going to fucking feed this little small group that I'm working with. It's the sheer scale of poverty and sheer scale of misery and exploitation that takes place that you can't do it, work and resist within your own confines, within your own reality, without being connected. If you disassociate yourself from the struggles of your neighbors, your family, your community, and just focus on, and it's kind of like a paradoxical thing where we're talking about a lot of people forget about the struggles of foreign nations and just worry about the domestic problems, but then you have a lot of people that just worry about foreign problems and don't get connected with the local struggles.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? So
and so you'll notice that as well when people will talk about ethnic discrimination, but without ever talking about travellers in Ireland. Do you notice that? A lot of liberals. That's a massive issue. We never fucking talk about that, and we can't.
Yeah, and it's a very sensitive subject for a lot of people as well. Like, so it's but that doesn't mean you can't take on the issue and engage with different communities, with different groupings that have that are under the same system but have different perspectives or different realities. So it's and I go back to the point, and I'm not sure if I'm answering her question. So apologies if we're side tracking here, but
we always do this.
That's what I'm talking about. We have to win the hearts and minds of as many people as possible, because without, like I said, a lot of people believe in the idea of armed struggle, and that's the way. Without no socialist revolution has been successful without armed revolution, and that's true to agree. But without the support of the wider population, armed revolutions also failed. Have to have that support, and gaining as much support from disenfranchised groupings or communities within society. And again, it's interlinking everything with a understand as this Marxist understanding of historical materialism, of developing dialectics through debate, through conversations, through streams like this, and getting a better understanding of the world that we live in. And that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to understand, smash the capitalist system and bring forward a new era of socialist revolutions, and the epoch of the most destructive mode of production this planet has ever known, in a space of time that has been forced on us, that we may not even have that luxury of bringing this revolutions to pass. So it's a big struggle that we're up against, but you know what I mean, that's every struggle is difficult, and we just have to maintain our discipline, maintain our understanding and our education. And that's why I think education is key to all this. Without, first of all, studying it and then digesting and debating and kind of coming up with different ideas. Without that, we're lost as a movement. And that, again, just go back, that's the strength of the Communist Party. I feel that that's ingrained in the party and has been since I've been in it.
That's a really, really good point, and you've touched on a number of different topics there as well. Especially with left-wing adventurism and ultra-leftism and taking up arms and so on and so forth, which is a really important point. There's sometimes a little bit of a confusion, especially in Ireland, and you can probably relate to this when I start talking about it. There's a confusion in terms of the causality of how armed struggle takes place and how armed struggle has taken place historically, and how armed struggle has taken place as a response to an exhaustion of all peaceful means, as a frustration with the political struggles, with the social struggles, with all kinds of different struggles, where people realise, look, there's no other way to get what we want, what we need, than by taking up arms. And sometimes people understand this the opposite way, and especially in Ireland, and especially with young lads as well, teenagers, especially young men in their 20s as well. They're pumped up full of testosterone, and they think that if they take up a fucking AK-47, if they take up the guns and they show arms, then that's going to spur on the working people to overthrow capitalism, and that's going to be and that's going to bring us to socialism, when it's fucking not. It needs to be the other way around. The workers need to be empowered. The workers need to be empowered before the guns come in, rather than the other way around. Do you know what I mean?
They have to be willing to defend the revolution, and if they're not willing to defend it, then your revolution is not going to be a socialist revolution. It's going to be an armed uprising. And we have to learn from our history. We have to learn from the history of successful revolutions and unsuccessful revolutions. It's tactics rather than principle, I suppose. That is what we're talking about here, in terms of the class war, the class struggle. And at the minute, different countries have different realities. They have different governments. They have different political systems. So, you just have to take it, as it's laid out. And I don't want to keep on saying this, but it's winning the hearts and minds of people. Without it, you don't have a socialist revolution. You don't have it. And that's what we have to struggle for and aim for.
Absolutely, and especially if it comes to taking up arms or fighting back against the state with force. You always need to make sure we have mass support for this, and it's really interesting. You're discussing this. It depends on the country that you're in. I'm very interested in the question with regard to the United States. I'm very interested with regard to the United States, because to me it's looking like they have pretty much exhausted all peaceful means to coming at imperialism from the belly of the beast, if you know what I mean. It's looking like they already actually have exhausted that potential. We obviously can't be too explicit with what we say here, but hopefully the meaning should be fairly clear to people. And Che would have spoken a lot about this in guerrilla warfare and so on and so forth. But when all the peaceful means have been exhausted, to quote a US president, revolutionary means become necessary. Do you think there are places in the world where such a strategy might need to be considered? Do you have any thoughts on these kinds of things within, particularly within the US context, maybe within the UK context? I know it's a little bit different. The UK's democratic system has had some interesting developments, especially we see developments with regard to Brexit and stuff like that. We never would have expected that European imperialism would have ever let such a thing happen through the fucking ballot box, the sort of the democratic system in the UK, the parliamentary system, might allow for slightly more sway than it would in the US, but the US seems to be fucking unrelenting. Even the most modest of social democratic reform seems impossible within such a system. Would you say in such a situation you might need to consider alternative methods in such a scenario? Maybe let's keep it fake so we don't get locked up straight away.
I think I get your your code.
Very subtle.
Listen, to be honest, like I can't prescribe what I think would be of benefit, or what would be in the interests of a different nation, of different state. I don't know enough of what's happening on the ground. I don't know if the political forces and the working class political forces are ready for that themselves. There may be some elements that are ready, are willing, but that doesn't. There's fucking elements in Ireland that are ready and willing to fucking, you know, take up arms. But what I'm saying is, I don't think, and it goes back to this. I don't think the level of class consciousness is there. Like, what you might have is an uprising, civil war, but I don't think revolution, or all those that were, you know, that are alienated from the American political system. I don't think the class consciousness is there, and without that, you know, you're just going into arms insurrection. You don't have the organization. You don't have, and it's not just people, you know, in the military front, in terms of not, you know, the American military, but, you know, taking up the arms. It's, you have to have the industrial arm.
Yeah, that's right.
Arms, and to strike, you have to have the cultural arms. You know, people ready to take up a fight against, you know, the system. You have to have, you know, people in education. You have to have people in sport. You have to have the whole range of people in society willing to not just go up against this behemoth of, you know, the imperialists, you know, the belly of the beast. You have to have people willing to defend it, and you cannot defend what you don't understand. And if you don't understand those class relations, the fundamental aspects of class, say imperialism, your efforts will be in vain. Let's, you know, to paraphrase, you're not going to change it, and that's what we're talking about. Left adventurism is, it's like, oh yeah, you know, we're so for this. But yeah, you may be for it, but are the people for it? Are they ready for it? And if you take up arms, is that going to actually alienate the class that you're actually trying to, you know, you know what I mean? The only people that will the only people that will emancipate the working class is the working class themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and that has to be a broad struggle, not just on one front, but on every front. Because the less support it has, the more chance it will fail. Because the seeds of reaction will be in, like, you have to remember the power of the capitalist class. They'll have everything working inside labor movements. They'll have their fucking moles. They'll have their agent provocateurs everywhere. They'll have this whole system ready to actually this movement. So principles, iron disciplined political party movements, you know, it's not going to, won't have the longevity of developing a socialist state. And that's what we're really for. It's not revolution is a stage, but what we're talking about is you overthrow the capitalist system with a mode of production of socialism that is publicly owned, ownership of the means of production, of the goods, of the services, of the factories, the farms, the offices, the banks, way that is in keeping with the ecological reality of, you know, environmental destruction, that we have to you know, bring all this stuff to the fore, and you know, so that's where we kind of have to, you know, be a bit mature in terms of our, you know, we all want this revolution, but you know, we have to make sure that everyone else wants it as well. You know what I mean? I could, you know, there's no point us all going out, the Communist Party going out and go, let's have a revolution, like bring up the tank in Connell Street. You know what I mean?
tempting, but
I'd love to see it happen.
yeah.
I'd love to see it happen, but like, there's a time and a place for it. Like,
Sure, look, it'd be fucking 1960 and all over again. We just get slaughtered. We'd be made martyrs, but ultimately, counter-revolution will prevail because there just isn't the socialist consciousness within the masses. Yet.
We cannot underestimate the power of counter-revolution because the overthrow of state on the Soviet Union. We cannot underestimate the forces that will work to destabilize any sort of revolutionary movement. Like the fact that fucking Cuba is still going is a miracle. But it shows, like we're talking about from the first question, that without that political class consciousness of knowing what type of state they are, they don't live under this false consciousness. Without that, they aren't. It wouldn't have maintained its for 50, 60 years of embargo.
Oh yeah. No, it's coming on for a long. 1969 is that when the Cuban Revolution was? Let me just double check. So I'm not fucking making an arse of myself online.
We should know this.
This is fucking
59. Yeah.
59. Excuse me. I'll have to fucking edit that out. Maybe Stalin will have edited that out anyway in the fucking internet connection issues. Hopefully Comrade Stalin is looking out for us there. No, very, very good. Really, really good points. We do need to be worrying about. We do need to always keep an eye on counter-revolution, how that may occur, and how people who maybe are comrades right now might end up heading down that path, and how we can sort of correct them here and now while we're at it, and sort of any contradictions which may potentially become antagonistic at some stage. Maybe we're sort of keeping an eye on those and making sure that they don't in a future point, which is of course problematic, especially in a colonial context where you end up sort of working hand in hand with the national bourgeoisie for a democratic revolution. It's tough. In Ireland, of course, Mao wrote quite a lot about that, which is very, very useful to read and study for anyone coming at it from this sort of anti-colonial context. But yeah, we need to keep an eye on counter-revolution and make sure that it isn't an issue. And I often get a lot of stick for being called a fucking revisionist and all that, but we do need to be anti-revisionist. We absolutely do need to be anti-revisionist.
100%.
In our positions, we can't allow right opportunism to become prominent in our movements, and whenever we see that sort of tendency towards reform, towards any form, any movement back towards the capitalist road, we do need to fucking nip that in the bud. And if we have comrades, obviously we're not in a revolutionary situation right now, but if we do see comrades sort of entertaining such ideas, we can pull them aside and have a little conversation with them and explain to them how ultimately their ideas, their positions will lead back to the capitalist road and ultimately to capitalism and not advance the international proletarian movements. So
so just final point there. Sorry to cut across, but I think what we're talking about here isn't taking people aside. It's developing political theory within our movements, because no matter what movement you have, you're going to have different people coming out with different ideas, and there may be some that are antagonistic, some that aren't. But I think what it is it's central is to come to a synthesis of understanding, a dialectical method to try and find out the contradictions within, the tactic or of a principle or tactic of armed struggle or armed revolution, and a host of other different things, and that's where, like, what I talk about, when an individual starts dictating, or whether inside a party or outside a party, it's based on the individual, and we see this in Trotsky movement. The movement is based on the individual rather than the party. I think the importance of, and the good thing I see within the Communist Party is that it's a collective, and it's a collective understanding, or trying to get to a collective understanding and developing ideas. And some, I've written stuff policy documents or stuff like that, and people have come back and said, I don't agree with that, I disagree with that, and then you take it on board, you go, okay, what do I agree with that? Yeah, and
Comrade,
you have to develop. If you don't do that,
Could I just stop you
Yes.
for 1 second? I'm so sorry to interrupt your line of thought there. We've been streaming for nearly 2 hours, and I've been drinking.
Oh fuck!
And I really need to use the bathroom. Do you mind if I run use the jacks, and you can continue talking, and I'll jump back in. I'll let you know when I'm back. I'll let you know the John for people in the US, the bathroom, the toilet. Is that okay? Can you can keep going, and I can just, and then we'll jump back because we're only fucking halfway through the questions. We've got so much to talk about.
Here. What? Have people checked out already? I'm sure that.
There's loads of people still watching. We got like 50 people, like averaging out about 50 people watching us. So this is cool. Like, we can keep going. More people will check in different time zones and so on. Do you mind if I'm just gonna? I'll be fucking 30 seconds, maybe a little bit more. And
will you do us a favor, though, Paul? Will you throw us a new question because?
Yeah, we can jump into that, and you can sort of fire away with that. All right. So, this must look so strange for people.
Live streaming.
If we were doing a podcast, we just edit all this out and it'd be grand. But sure, look, we've got Stalin's ghost to look after all that for us anyway, so no hassle at all. All right. So question number 5, we're going to touch on a fairly big question, which is, I think, very important for social democrats in particular, people who were sort of left leaning, but they're not really sold on communism, especially on the historical legacy of communism and so on and so forth. And these are the topics of AI, automation, and universal basic income, and so on and so forth. So tell us, what role do artificial intelligence, AI, automation, and universal basic income play in the capitalist illusion? Okay, is that a good enough question, and I can run off for 30 seconds?
I'll try waffle there for a bit there.
All right, bit of waffle, and I'll let you know when I'm back. Okay.
Okay. Well,
Cheers, comrade.
Okay. So, I for people that are trying to understand the idea of like the universal basic income, for me, it's it's one of those elements where it seems like a person be a reasonable demand, but you always have to question in whose interest and who's actually voicing the idea of a universal basic income. And you see more of even capitalists or social democrats looking for a universal basic income. But the idea is, if you have a universal basic income, well, what's the reason to maintain social welfare in terms of providing free education, providing free or social housing, free education. So I think what UBI is trying to actually devalue work. It's trying to take away that work isn't part of the value system, that you get a certain amount of per week or per month, and this is you use it for your own needs, and so it becomes an individualized concept that you're given this amount of money and then you take care of yourself, and that's how capitalism is structured, is the idea of this individualized concept that you look after yourself, and if you don't have the money left over from what we've given you, then that's your own fault. You were given the money if you needed it for health, education, you have the means there. So what it does is it takes away the incentive or the state's reason to actually provide services, and services, as we know, are integral to our developments, are integral to our to the type of conditions that we live under. Certain countries have certain levels of healthcare, certain levels of education, and without that, without the need or the reason for the state to actually fund these, then they'll become privatized, because the narrative is, you've been given this social income, you don't need, the state isn't going to provide. Good man, Paul. I'm just saying the state doesn't need to provide in terms of universal basic income, the state doesn't need or won't say, we're going to give you this 15,000, whatever amount it is, and we're going to provide you with education, health, social services, social welfare, all the safety nets of a modern welfare state. It will just, they'll use it as a way to, I think that's what it is. And to individualize our own collective needs, and it's based on you've been given this income, how you use it is up to yourself. But we've given it to you, and we're not going to provide education, health, all the services that we're talking about. So, it's a con, really. It's a drive to get people to go, oh, actually, you know, I don't disagree with the whole universal basic income, but I think that should be paramount with a demand for a universal healthcare, universal education, universal housing, public housing, universal to jobs. You know, like that. That's not part of the narrative. The narrative will be, you get your universal basic income, the government is not going to provide any other service because you've been given this, and so it's based on your individual thriftness to, you know, maintain that income to pay for any service that you may need or may not need. So, yeah, like it's under. You always have to question whose interests are these policies in favor for. You know, if it was the working class, they wouldn't be pushed. They wouldn't be driving it, and that's the reality. Is like we have to go back. This is a class war. Their interests are to maintain and accumulate more wealth. And if wealth, and I think especially in, because these UBI is more popular in Western countries, and you know we've seen the reason why there was a shift in manufacturing bases because they were able to avail of super exploitation in the global south, and I think, you know, where there is wealth or profitable industries is in the services industries, in education, health, and all this sort of stuff. So I think the main reason is this drive to privatization of all these essential services and needs of people in Western countries. So that's that kind of what I would debunk of the UBI and those that follow it or would promote it. And then automation is another. It's one of those things. It's again, whose interest is automation for? Like I would say, automation is a good thing, but in the hands of capitalists, what does it do? It actually throws people out of work. It undervalues or it changes the actual composition of you know, technology and labor. And this is where one of those internal contradictions of capitalism plays, where the more capital or you know, machinery, technological innovation is developed, the less profitable an industry becomes, because the source of profit is labor and the extraction of surplus value from labor power. So the more you actually get rid of that labor process, the less profitable it will be. So this internal contradiction with each individual capitalist trying to you know, outdo each other, they're actually undermining the source of profit, and then you have this drive to other regions to super exploit, because you know, as machinery and technology develop in the West, along with the gains of, you know, trade union rights and all this sort of stuff, just totally encroach on the profits available in the global south, in the global north, sorry, and that's where you've seen, you know, in the 70s with the profitability crisis of the 70s, where you've seen this big shift in the industrial makeup of imperialism, shifting from the global north to the global south, and that's transitions, and it's still in play today. So yeah, like I had this conversation, and maybe you come in on this, in terms of like, you know, AI being, you know, what if a capitalist can use AI to read reproduce itself. Because I think that's the idea of like a human, has intelligence, has consciousness, and reproduces itself. Where machines don't, they're static. They're put into work when the human or labor puts them into action. But AI, is this a form of trying to make machines or artificial intelligence reproduce itself, so there isn't a need for labor? But then how does that come into the realm of exploitation? So, AI is a very interesting subject, and something that we as a the left or the communist movement have to come to grips, because I think it's this huge benefit. What's the fucking, why do we need a manager or a capitalist if we have such automation? We don't need it. Simply, you have planners and all this sort of stuff can go into the whole social planning system of a country. So I think there's huge benefits to it, but it all depends on who controls it, who owns it. And, if the capitalists control own it, you can be sure it's going to be in their interests that they'll run it, and they'll try to extract as much profit as possible.
Yeah, just exactly. I mean, it's something that could really be utopian under socialism. It could really be a game changer if the means of production were held communally by everybody, but under something that could be utopian. Well, utopian obviously means like impossible, but something that could be perfect, that could be ideal. Under socialism, under capitalism, becomes a dystopian. It becomes a nightmare. Where none of us have jobs. None of us can even sell our labor anymore. The one fucking thing that we had to sell is gone through automation, through artificial intelligence, and now we're just being fucking bought off with a little bit of universal basic income. We're given a little bit of universal basic income so we can continue to consume and keep on purchasing consumer goods in the shops to help keep the capitalists afloat, not to help us, to help keep the capitalists afloat. And this is why it's so important to take a really critical analysis when we take a look at, especially universal basic income. I mean, there's a reason why right-wing free marketeers like Milton Friedman supported universal basic income. It's because it fundamentally helps the market. It's a boost to the market. Do you know what I mean? I think a more earnest socialist, actually no, not even a socialist, a social democratic, like a genuine social democratic position, if you actually care about people, will probably be focusing more on universal basic services rather than universal basic income. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So rather than saying, all right, look, we'll give you fucking €1,000 a month to go and spend it on whatever the fuck you want. You can buy, you can pay for your fucking surgery. You can pay for your fucking appendectomy. You can pay for your schooling. You can pay for your food. You can pay for your fucking fleshlight, whatever the fuck it is. You know, some people in the chat are snickering at that one. If you know what that is, then you need to have a look at yourself. I don't want to take the piss. So you can have all this money, but I think you may have touched on it while I was in the jocks. It's generally used as a way of cutting a lot of the other social welfare, a lot of the social safety net that we've come to know and love, especially in sort of social democratic countries.
And struggled for. Like, we can't deny that, that there has been a struggle. It's not like it's all this one way that the state is like, oh yeah, we want to give you all this. No, it's been hard fought. And I think we can't dismiss that either, that like these gains have been gains and hard fought for, for decades. And in no short thanks to the Soviet Union and the socialist states and what they developed. You know what I mean? Without that,
we wouldn't have the concessions from the Western capitalists. We wouldn't have those concessions of, for example, in the UK, the NHS. They wouldn't have had that if they weren't concerned about a potential brain drain from workers in the United Kingdom who they were concerned might head over to the socialist states, the socialist bloc, mostly the USSR, the Soviet Russia, I suppose. We wouldn't have all of these things that we sort of have prize as being intrinsic to capitalism, progress. We look at Western Europe and, you have some revisionists who'll say that Western Europe in some ways embodies Marxism and the Marxist vision of the future better than any socialist state. And what a fucking joke! What an absolute joke that is. And you know, it's something that I would have even considered as well when I was going through my own political development at a certain stage. You know. But these are ideas that we need to correct, you know. But these things, these universal basic services, the healthcare, the education, the housing, which of course are being eroded now, these are concessions because across the border they've already got all those things provided universally to everybody, affordably to everybody, you know. And without that block, we're seeing it all being eroded away since the fall of the USSR, since the counter-revolution. We're seeing all of those things being rolled back now. And now you see university education, they're increasing the prices almost every fucking year in Ireland. You look at university education, third level education in the UK. What's it now, like £40,000 or something per year or something like that for some courses? Absolute joke. Nobody can afford that. You're gonna be caught in a trap of debt for your entire life. If you decide to go to that question. Sorry, go on ahead.
As well, as well, just to add to that is like the whole idea of like it's the post-World War II settlement that
the Marshall Plan,
like the golden era of capitalism. It wasn't the fucking golden era of capitalism. It was the blip in the capitalist system. This actually was the time when Labour actually started to make inroads in capitalist profitability, because of the developments within their own domestic nations, and also, you know, looking at the example of the Soviet Union, that they've had to make concessions. The capitalist class had to make concessions. Otherwise, the fear was, you know, you have a lot of people looking at, first of all, the victory of, and this is what sometimes a lot of people find difficult because of so much anti-communism out there, is there was a different mindset of what people believed of or thought of Stalin, of the Soviet Union in the 40s and 50s. You know, so they had a different reality. They saw, like, they were, you know, in the bare face of it all. So there was a real, you know, example of a different economic mode of production, and that drove fear into the hearts of the industrialists, of the capitalists, of the finance. You had to make these concessions. And so this capitalism is, I would say, is a blip in the trajectory of the capitalist system because of the concessions. And it's like we're saying, since the collapse, and we have to call it what it is, it wasn't that socialism failed, it was that socialism was betrayed, that socialism was dismantled. And if anyone hasn't read, I would fully recommend Socialism Betrayed by Roger Kenny and his name at the minute, but Socialism Betrayed, check it out. It goes into a lot of detail of, you know, their analysis of why it was dismantled, betrayed, and, you know, a lot of that came from internally within the Soviet Union, and that's what we're talking about when I mentioned earlier on in terms of, you know, class development in the latter period of the Soviet Union, because it led to different class powers or different class interests being given prowess or being given a voice, and then with the, you know, with foreign capitalist intervention as well, you know, so it was a shitstorm of reaction and revision, and which ultimately led to, despite many attempts, and we have to remember that, you know, the people in the Soviet Union didn't vote for it to be dissolved. You know, I think it was like over 70% of the population of the socialist republics wanted to keep the union, but sadly, that's it wasn't their democracy wasn't you know, adhered to. So just and so I as well, I have to apologize to your listeners, because it was very awkward when you left there. It was very awkward to get going on the
question. Was it?
Sorry. Oh man, that was torture.
Talking to yourself, looking in the mirror. Sorry, mate. I didn't mean to be bothered fucking off like that. Sorry about that, man. That's my bad.
I just want to apologize.
Take that up with our general secretary. You have to report that to Eugene. This is counter-revolutionary. Leaving for this is counter-revolutionary. The Bolsheviks wouldn't have done by it. Do you know, when you were talking there, I thought up a really good point in my head. Now it's completely gone because I'm a little bit drunk. Because I thought we'd be talking for an hour and a half max. I thought we'd be finished at 10 o'clock.
I have work in the morning.
You've got work in the morning. I've got work in the morning. This is work for me. I'm at work right now. Oh Jesus, depressing.
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the chat. Yeah.
No, it's really good. No, I did have a point, and I'm trying to come back to it. What are we talking about again? Revisionism, Khrushchev's bollocks.
Khrushchev the bollocks. Yeah.
Khrushchev the bollocks. I believe that's what he was referred to in the USSR.
Originally, we're talking about in terms of capitalism. The golden age of capitalism not being the golden age of capitalism. It was the great concessions to the working class. Of the global north. So
you know what?
We were at.
That's an interesting period as well. Now, this isn't the great point that I had before, but it is an interesting observation. I mean, if you look at the period of social democracy, really, you're looking at the Marshall Plan, sort of post-1950s. The US came in and supported a lot of Western European countries, rebuilt them after the Second World War, and so on and so forth. People often hold up social democracy at the pinnacle of human development, the end of history, such as Fukushima. Fukushima, is that, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Fukuyama, I think it is.
Fuck me. So they hold that up as the pinnacle of human development. How long did that fucking last? How long did that period last? Well, 20 years. 20 years
yeah,
before
exactly.
the 1970s. How long did the USSR last? How long has Cuba lasted? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. Paul.
It's something that people don't fucking think about. They don't fucking think about it. It's like, oh, well, socialism just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Social democracy works. Mate, it fucking doesn't.
But Paul, there's always Sweden, you know what I mean?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Do you know who I was listening to the other day, right? I was listening to, and I like him generally. Professor Richard Wolff.
Oh yeah.
Have you listened? You've listened to him. He's a big co-op. He's a big co-op head.
Oh, he's a co-op man. Yeah,
he's a fucking co-op man.
If ever there was a co-op man,
if there was ever a co-op man, it's fucking Richard Wolff right there. I tell you what, he needs to fucking read his Rosa Luxemburg. I mean, this has been fucking dealt with. Like this has been dealt with.
Yeah.
This has been dealt with. You know, over 100 years ago, this was dealt with. You know, but anyway, he's trying. He appeals to a certain audience.
He's good at popularizing
He's popularizing
terms.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's great.
Good. It's developing class consciousness, which is what we want. But
yeah,
I fully agree with your fundamental analysis that cooperation or co-ops are not.
It's not the way to socialism.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a planned economy. You can't plan. Yeah.
In absence of a larger socialist project. Yeah.
Yeah, they have their role, and they've had their role in socialist states as well.
Yeah,
we can't they're part and parcel of the developments. Yeah, and Cuba and the USSR, but you can't plan an economy on co-ops. You have to have state intervention, state planning. A lot of this stuff
can be
done. We have like a lot of the we're probably tangenting here, but like a lot of the accusations against the USSR was the fact that it was hugely bureaucratic, but there was a necessity to have a certain amount of in there to plan. Like you didn't have the computer systems, you didn't have the planning systems we now have. So you needed, without having that computer, you needed 10, 20, 100 heads working on economic planning. But we don't necessarily need that now. So I don't, the idea of that, communism is all about bureaucracy. That can be like fucking mutants right then. Yeah. No, we actually have. If you look at the modern capitalist companies, they're planned economies. They have down to the T what they need to get in, what they need to buy in, or what they need to produce, or it's a planned capitalist firm. You know what I mean? And if we work on that level, and these are not small fry companies. These are large scale companies, developing all around the world. So, or transporting and selling all over the world. So you can
Yeah.
have this non-bureaucratic socialist state. It's just to kind of refute that idea that it will eventually lead to bureaucratism, which is false. It was a necessity because of the level of technology.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know, we got completely fucking distracted there. We got completely distracted. I was going to make a point. I was going to complain about Professor Richard Wolff, and you made this really good
shit.
dialectical analysis, and you looked at the pros and the cons, and the bringing it. You added too much nuance. You know, too much fucking nuance. You don't want that fucking nuance. Get out of here with nuance. Fucking you and your CPI. What a cunt. No, here. He said this thing, right? I watched the video. I was interested in to hear his take on Venezuela. There's a video of him responding to one of his patrons, his Patreon supporters. Wink, wink. Link in the description box below.
Very important. Very important.
Well, it is if you're fucking unemployed. By the way, thanks very much to everybody who's supported me on Patreon. I really fucking support. I really, really appreciate that. I will be doing a solo stream on Friday where I won't be shit-faced, and I will be talking to everybody and doing some channel updates and all sort of things. So we'll talk. We'll chill on Friday without the vodka. Anyway, so thanks, comrades. So back to Richard Wolff. Richard Wolff, right,
yes.
During the stream on Venezuela, he talked about how people love to complain about Venezuelan socialism, okay? And he said that people love to focus on Venezuela for being this failure because of socialism. And they don't talk about oil, and they don't talk about inflation, and they don't talk about that fucking venture into cryptocurrencies, and they don't talk about imperialism and sanctions and so on. So they don't talk about that sort of stuff. They just say, well, it failed because of socialism. And then he says, and I'm like, yay, class, Richard Wolff, fucking calling it, fucking legend, Honda, fucking Richard Wolff, fucking drop that mic, boy. You know, and I'm really fucking excited. I'm listening to this, and 2 or 3 minutes into the fucking YouTube video, he pulled us out and says, look, if you want to see a good example of socialism, you need only look to Europe. I'm like, oh no.
Oh yeah. Here comes the Swedish shop mic.
He says, look at the people of Sweden. Look at the people of Norway who say that they live in a socialist system. And I'm like, wait, hang on a minute now. The people of the country decide whether or not a country's socialist or not. Hang on a minute now. This is a fucking weird arse revision that you're doing here. But then I thought, okay, I'll let it go, because there is in the popular consciousness the idea that Scandinavian countries are, you know, social welfare state and so on and so forth is kind of socialistic, yeah. But then he goes one step further, comrade. He goes one step further. Yeah. He goes and he says, you need only look at Portugal. Well, he didn't say you need only look at Portugal, because he's not fucking Irish. But he did say that you need to look at Portugal. And he said that Portugal, with the Socialist Party in charge of the government, is a much better example of socialism in action than any other state. So if you wanted to look at socialism successfully, you should look at Portugal and the successes since the Socialist Party has come to power in Portugal. Yeah. Now, do you want to take a moment? Maybe you want to get another beer, you want to get another fucking drink, and just mull that one over for a second. Portugal, the socialist, the fucking the pinnacle, the fucking apex of socialism historically. I mean, I think that Karl Marx and Engels wrote about Portugal in 2020 as being the pinnacle of socialism. But this is what he says. Yeah. This is what he says.
Richie boy, you've let me down.
What the fuck? What the absolute fuck?
I think it's one of those things where you have a lot of left-wing academics, Marxist, quote unquote academics, and there's a fundamental lack of understanding of it's not just about a political party being in power. You could have a fucking communist party in power and not take over the means of production that is still run in private by private interests. And I think like Portugal's interest. I went to I think it was 2018. I went to the 20th Congress of the Communist Party of Portugal. It was awesome. Let me tell you, we're talking about like
they
small communist parties.
They're fairly big, aren't they?
Oh, they're savage. Like I went in there, and
Wait,
it was like,
have you been
to
Greece?
Like,
have you been to Greece? Have you met the KK?
No, I haven't met the KK.
Not yet. We need to buzz over there and see what the crack is with the lads, because that's a serious fucking.
We need to go over.
Oof.
But like you want to see. So I walked into this massive big stadium, and like thousands and thousands of people, all
communists, all of them
communists, and then up at the front there was all like the delegation row, and that's where I got kind of front seat looking at this whole thing. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is. It gave it that little bit of like, oh wow, this is how a party should be. But then again, you have to. It doesn't matter how big or strong if they went into a coalition for particular reasons, and I think they've probably felt the brunt ends. It's like you're entering a partnership with the devil. They were never going to get the kudos by entering in with the Socialist Party. Because the Socialist Party were going to get the kudos, and if it went wrong, they would have been, they get the stick. It was they took a line to enter to try and basically to ease all the decade of austerity and to put in policies that were going to help the working class. That was their reason for that. From the conversations I had with members over there, but again, like it kind of echoes what we're talking about, like in terms of electoral politics, without revolutionary theory and revolutionary developments. You're not going to. You may wedge a few taxes here, there, and everywhere, but you're fundamentally not going to challenge the state and the capitalist mode of production, because the state is there to defend the private interests of capital. And so, and like we were talking about earlier, like you can have. A state can nationalise the fucking banks. A state like Ireland nationalised the banks. You can nationalise different areas, but fundamentally, it's the capitalist state protecting itself. And when you see at times of crisis, that's when the state comes in, and that's when it protects those interests. And it will bring them under the umbrella of the state of public ownership, or not even public ownership, but national ownership. And then as soon as it's, the weathered the storm, back out into private hands, let's sell these state assets. And that's what it is. Like nationalisation under capitalism is only the interests of the capitalist class. And a lot of people get duped by that. Like the whole, remember, like whatever, a couple of months ago, the hospitals being publicly owned, or they weren't doing bollocks. They were just being protected. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
Private hospitals are protected. So
well, the capitalists are making the same fucking profits before and after. I mean, that fucking tells you something, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and guaranteed profits.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, let's get the state to take over and pay the bill. Fucking happy days. No resistance. Oh, Richard Wolff, though. God damn.
How could he let us down?
I watched a lot of his videos. He let us down, man. Yeah.
He's got a lot of good points. He's doing good work generally. I mean,
he's doing good work. Yeah. Some people just fail on that international question.
Look, there's just a few. Everybody has their fucking downfalls. Everybody has their fucking pitfalls. They'll be fucking 80% correct, 90% correct, but they'll fucking have a shitty take on X, Y, or Z issue or so.
Yeah, I tell you what though, if it brings more people into having a positive light of socialism, then grand. But bringing it to the next step of political activism, like what I hate about fucking left wing intellectualism is everything's great about socialism until you talk about real existing socialist countries. Yeah. So you know what I mean. So that's where I have a pet gripe with left intellectuals about that. Like you can say, "Oh, this is great, that's great," but really, that was wrong. Yeah. You're not going to get it. You're some fucking utopian ideal of what constitutes a social state. It's going to be fucking dripped in struggle, in blood, probably, in clashes of the state of the police, whatever armed forces there are. It's not going to be like. Can you imagine Michael O'Leary? Imagine tomorrow we had a big enough group and to say, Michael O'Leary, we're going to take over Ryanair. Do you think he's just going to sit back and fucking take this sort of stuff? Not a chance.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No.
I'm not talking about Ryanair now. I'm talking about someone else.
Yeah, no, we're obscuring because we don't want to run into any legal troubles. Yeah, no, you're dead right. Go man.
Next question.
Moving swiftly on. So
moving on. We'll have to put an end to this. What time would we call it quits at? How many listeners do you have there?
Tomorrow we still got 45, so it's pretty good. It's fairly good. Imagine that, and like if you imagine yourself being actually in like a lecture hall with 45 people, it's fairly decent.
I said we haven't done too bad for ourselves.
Not too bad, no. You still, if you're in real life, you'd be like, oh, that's deadly. 45 people showed up. Could you imagine if 45 people showed up to a CPI meeting? We'd be like, oh Jesus, that's fucking brilliant. Sure, look,
we get 95
every meeting. Look, we'll storm the Winter Palace tomorrow. We'll be grand. Yeah, no bother. Yeah. All right. Let's push on with this. With the questions that we have,
segments,
with the segments, because we get distracted and we run off into our nonsense, and of course the alcohol facilitates that all too well. Okay, good. We dealt with artificial intelligence, UBI, automation, and all that sort of stuff. All right, now we're moving on to fucking Margaret Thatcher, Tina.
Oh, jeez.
Here we fucking go. There is no alternative.
The Iron Lady. Yeah.
Iron Lady and fucking Reagan and the likes of them. Oh, Jesus, what a bunch of bastards. So you can't be dialectical about that. What an absolute fucking bunch of piece of shit. Fuck the 80s. Cool aesthetic, but I'm a hairy bastard, so I should be embracing a bit more. But fucking,
I just have a nice picture of you. It's just like I just had a still view in my screen for the last 2.5 hours.
Oh yeah,
with locks of golden fur.
Oh Jesus Christ! Yeah, I'll be the one joining the fucking Queen tribute band. That'll be me. I'll be singing the falsetto. Okay, no, we're not fucking there yet.
Next question.
Moving on to the real shit. All right. So listen, there is no alternative. We hear this all the fucking time, and we've come to the end of history, as they say. And as Mark Fisher has pointed out, and he's quoted both Zizek and Frederick Jameson on this one. He notes that it's easier to imagine an end to the world than an end to capitalism, right? And he talked about this a lot about in Capitalist Realism. I think it was 2015 when he wrote that book. A good book, worth reading. So how do capitalists make us believe that there is no alternative to capitalism? That this system, while flawed, is the best that we've got and can ever get. How do they conjure up this illusion? What do you think?
It's by denouncing and absolutely outright just take any semblance of what really happened or the material reality of socialist states, and they denounce its leaders, its movements as anti-democratic, as dictators, as murderers, you name it, whatever slander that can be thrown against leaders or movements, they'll use whatever means they have. Say it again.
2 gazillion dead.
2 gazillion dead. Yeah, exactly. They'll fabricate stories. They'll use, one-sided sources. They'll create narratives like we were talking about earlier. They'll create narratives to suit their particular agenda. They'll use, stories of victims of communism, and it will be spread across the papers. Like all this sort of stuff is integral in their agenda to actually crush socialism, Marxism as an idea, as a working class idea of ideology of the working class.
Hey, listen, Owen, whole lot of more.
Yo,
Take that.
oh,
You fucking
hold
owned,
on, yeah.
Tanky. Oh, clip that out, lads. Fucking Tanky owned on live stream. Jesus, yeah.
Get out of it. Well, I tell you
17
what.
quadrillions deads. Deads as a result.
Yeah, well, the argument is like, well, how many famines happened before that, and how many famines happened after that?
As we know all too
You know
well
what
in
I mean?
Ireland.
Countless, yeah. So like, you know what I mean? The socialist system actually ended a famine. Like, obviously you have to take into account some of the warriors, the special periods and stuff like that. But what if you look at those socialist states and the population before and after the revolution? We're talking about people that didn't have fucking running water, didn't have electricity, didn't have food, didn't have jobs, struggled hard on lands that they, either owned partially or were working, under the diktats of the landed aristocracy. A feudal system. Not even a fully developed capitalist system at that time either, like in Russia, for example. But we're talking about, a whole, like hundreds of millions of people that weren't educated, were illiterate, and give or take 20, 30 years, it totally changed. Like near 98% literacy rate, you have access for everyone with education up to third level free. You have access to healthcare, social welfare nets like pensions, guaranteed work, creches, in workplaces. So emancipation, or not full emancipation, but moving to the emancipation of women in the workforces as well. With having rights and not being being partitioned into domestic labor. That there was a drive, for emancipation of women, emancipation of even the different nations and republics in the Soviet Union. That racism was official policy to stamp out wasn't tolerated. It may have existed because it's like I said, it was born out of the womb, dripping with blood of capitalism and feudalism. So you're going to have some of the hangovers of different systems, but the drive of the state was development. And like we're saying, this was first time anywhere on the planet where these rights and guarantees were given to working people. And so there is no alternative. Looks at the period of when socialism was, and I suppose we're talking about, because this is the main player on the world stage of the Soviet Union. Like there is, of course, Cuba, Vietnam, China, stuff like that. But we're talking about really where this concept of there is no alternative, really got focus.
Yeah, we're getting traction.
The 80s. Yeah, like the 80s. And this is the exact time where the Soviet Union was starting to lag. But the Soviet economy wasn't doing too bad compared to the capitalist states either. It wasn't like it was defunct, but there was a huge problems in terms of the black market, second economy kind of running riot, and private interests gaining more traction within the party as well. But this is the dissolution of the party, of the state apparatus, of socialism is. Like we said, it's a state of the proletariat, is a dictatorship of the proletariat, and there are structures in place, and there are policies in place to ensure the rights of the majority of the working class. Now, obviously, any state is a state to enforce some sort of repression against an antagonistic grouping. That's the idea of a state. It's not there just for no reason. Like you're there because there's other forces in play that want to either circumvent or take it down or whatever it is. That the state is there for a reason. And in socialism, the state is a key factor. And when you dismantle the state apparatus, you dismantle the power of the working class. so we have to take in, this in context of Tina, that when the collapse did happen, this was like the end of history, the end of class struggle, which we know is pure bollocks. But it's trying to debunk the idea that there is an alternative system. That socialism won't actually provide the needs, wants, and desires of citizens. But we know through our lived history that 20, 30 years after the socialism collapse, poverty rates have fucking gone up, death rates and life expectancy have decreased, death rate increased, AIDS, homelessness, poverty, all this sort of stuff has, swept across all these former socialist states. And
even nowadays, Conrad, I have to interrupt. I mean, look at Cuba nowadays.
Yeah.
Look at the life expectancy in Cuba is higher than it is in the richest country in the world, the United States. Right? That fucking says like the infant mortality is lower than it is in the United States. I mean, they're not far away from each other. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no fucking reason why that would be aside from socialism, and it's really, really important to hammer those sorts of points home. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and but like that's the whole thing that they'll avoid, like, and that's what when you hear people go, Cuba's great, like the healthcare is great, but like they have fucking nothing. We're talking about, we're still talking about like if you look at the countries in that region, so don't compare Cuba to America, to
Dominican
Ireland.
Republic.
Different. Yeah, it's like taking Cuba and putting it on par with nations that have had the luxury of exploiting the fucking working class for hundreds of years through colonialism and all this sort of stuff. And they go, okay, well, look, Cuba doesn't have this. Well, look at compare it to states in their region, and you'll see how fucking great socialism for the people there, that they're not dying hungry on the streets every year. So
that's such a good point. And I really want to hammer that point home as well, because there's a lot of people in the West for whom hearing about a slightly increased literacy rates or life expectancy or decreased infant mortality or something like that doesn't really mean that much. If you're living in the Western world, you're very privileged. You come from what you believed to be maybe like a middle class. I mean, you're working class most likely, but you believe yourself to be in the middle class in the Western world, and you have all these sort of privileges and stuff like that. And so when you think of the hammer and sickle, when you think of the USSR, you think that's a step backwards. But for so many people in the developing world, that's a step forwards. What they had in the USSR, what they have in Cuba, what they have in all this place, it's like fucking light years ahead into the future. And I think comrade Hakeem, a fantastic YouTuber. I know what a good YouTuber. What are you talking about? Bollocks. There's actually a good one. His name's Hakeem, and you should all subscribe to this comrade. He's absolutely brilliant. He's a comrade from Iraq, a very, very good principled Marxist-Leninist YouTuber. And he talked about how the hammer and sickle represents progress to them. It still represents progress. And you mentioned this before as well, when you talked about like Stalin and stuff like that, and how he was perceived prior to, decades and decades of anti-communist propaganda and so on and so forth. He was still seen as a progressive figure to so many people who were seeking emancipation all over the world. And all of these material advances that were achieved by people, by the working, by the global proletariat and peasantry as well, to maybe a slightly lesser extent, these were seen as massively progressive, and they still are seen as massively progressive. It's the reason why you can go to southwestern India, Kerala, or maybe I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, Kerala, Kerala, or whatever it might be, and they have the fucking hammer and sickle plastered up everywhere. They have a communist organization who has some semblance of power over there, through a bourgeois parliamentary system. So there are some contradictions there which need to be resolved, but that still means progress. That still means moving forward historically to those people, rather than to a lot of people in the Western world moving backwards, which is what it does mean to a lot of people in the Western world. Unfortunately, it means moving back to dictatorship, to poverty, to hunger, to famine, to all these sorts of things, and that has unfortunately also spread to some former socialist states as well. And it's a bit shitty to talk about this as well, because we can all sort of uphold. We can all look at these statistics which show that most people who were born in Soviet Russia during the USSR want to go back to that, and who are still alive now want to go back to that. There's massive nostalgia for the USSR. There's also a substantial amount of people who don't want to go back to that, and young people as well. If you talk to the average 20-year-old from Russia who's maybe visiting the Western world, you might meet them in Dublin or something like that, night out with your friends, whatever it might be, and they see communism as this sort of old, outdated thing that people fought for before, but it didn't really work, and ultimately it wasn't worth the hassle, and so it's better to leave that in the past, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, so that's why it's important to take into consideration the material conditions of where you are in the world, geographically and historically, because in some places the hammer and sickle and socialism means progress, but in a lot of other nations we've been manipulated via the capitalist illusion, which we're talking about here, to believing that it's this sort of reactionary thing, that it's retroactive, that we all just want to go back. Like if we fly the hammer and sickle, we just want to go back to fucking Russia in the 1930s. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think I know, like, listen, 100%, and I think that's where we have to, step up our arguments to say, no, we don't want to go back, and because if we go back, we'll just arrive at the same place where fucking capitalism has been restored. What we have to do is take our understanding of what went right and what went wrong, and not be under the illusion or the not take the narrative of what happened in the USSR or different socialist countries as gospel, because obviously there's an interest to deceive people into what socialism was, what it achieved, and what it can achieve. And what we have to try and develop is an understanding of what we can achieve through the public ownership of the common ownership of the means of production. What we can achieve, what technology will allow us to achieve, what the insanity of markets in the pursuit of profit, and especially this is where I really think capitalism is going to absolutely be screwed. They have no process other than to crises. So whether that's environmental, whether that's health through the global pandemic, the health crisis, the housing crisis, economic crisis that's coming down the line, and it's only kind of, I can't see it getting better. I can't see crisis all of a sudden fucking falling off the table for capitalism. No, it's only going to get worse. And their only modus operandi is to try and accumulate more profit, to monopolize even further, to exploit even further, using AI, using UBI, using different methods to ensure, and this race to the bottom, this not bringing the standards of the working class of the global north to the global south, but actually a drive down in terms of wealth and accessibility to services. So this is the reality. This is the drive of capitalism. It's not to harken back to, like we're talking about, the golden era. That was the blip of capitalism, and that was the only reason that blip arrived was because of the success of communism, of the Soviet Union, of the first socialist states. So what we have to do is to try and rationally try debate. Without, like, listen, if you go try fucking waving a Stalin flag all around, the streets, you're only going to get so much support. You're going to, in all honesty, you'll probably detract more people than. So our goal is not to detract people from the cause of socialism, but to actually attract them.
Of course, yeah.
Whatever means is possible. Like we all live in our own. We have our families, we have our community, we have our workplaces, we have our social outlets, whatever that, and it's trying not to beat the fucking hammer and sickle into people, but want people to have rational understanding of the history of socialism, but also the history of capitalism. Remember, when people equate socialism and capitalism, they're taken as if both are cut from the same cloth. Capitalism was fucking brought out and built under the sheer exploitation, the murder, the plundering, the murdering, enslavement of entire nations, of entire peoples. Cities were built through gangs, through organized crime or different links. So it wasn't this coordinated attempt to build a utopian or even a developed nation, but it was driven by absolute like incriminate. Like I say in the book, I say there's been vile emperors and empires throughout the history, but there's probably none so vile as the real existing capitalists in the world today, because we are entering a period where the climate emergency is not going away. It's only getting worse. What capitalist state is going to provide the health, the housing, the education, the services to working classes? When their main goal is to accumulate wealth through exploitation of the working class. So it's not going to happen. It's only a trail of destruction. A mode of, in one article said, it's the mode of destruction, not production. It's a mode of destruction now. It's exited stage right to the mode of destruction. It has nothing to give to working class people of the global north or global south. It only has on offer more misery, more exploitation, more poverty, and that's the need. That brings us back to the need to understand the system, debunk the narratives of there is no alternative. There fucking is alternative. Socialism is the alternative, not eco-socialism or different variants. It's socialism. We're talking about ownership of the means of production, not the cooperative movements, important as they may be, but they're not integral. But what we're trying to do is link in those peoples in those struggles and not to alienate them. And that's why I mentioned, and I'll mention it again, like it's about winning those hearts and minds of the people that are going to defend, not only fight for the revolution, but defend it. Because without that defense, we're not going to be able to instill those policies. Because without them, our economies, our ecology is for wreck and ruin.
Look, this is it, and we know this all too well, being fucking, this colonized country sort of beside this massive imperialist power, the United Kingdom. The second we try to bring about any sort of meaningful, transformative, anti-imperialist policies, whether or not they're socialist in nature or socialist in trajectory, the second we try to carve out our own independent paths, we're fucked. We are absolutely fucked. Britain has shown historically that it's prepared to use military force to quelch our uprisings, any of them, even the most fucking moderate of them. And we need to be prepared for that to happen at any stage. So we need to be very fucking careful about how we approach any of these issues, And
exactly, and adjust our tactics.
And adjust our tactics accordingly, exactly. And it's all well and good for us to sort of... there's so many different approaches and there's so many pros and cons to each of them. It's very easy to say, as when we talked a little bit about this sort of left adventurism sort of position earlier on, where you might take up arms and just say, "Grand, we just fucking kick the capitalists out. We'll kick the imperialists out. We'll just fucking shoot them all out, grand, and we'll fucking take back the industry and grand, no hassle." But do you think that's going to fucking stand? Do you think that we're going to be actually able to engage in production after that? What do you think the fucking EU is going to do in the face of such a revolution? I mean, we need to be, and especially if the people aren't already on board on that. And okay, you might be able to take sort of an ultra perspective. You might engage in commandism and just fucking hold people up at gunpoint and say, "Look, fucking join us, or we're gonna fucking shoot your family up, or we're gonna kill your family, or whatever. Just fucking join us," and get everybody in the fucking country on board through fear and whatever. You could fucking do that, but is that going to sustain? No, you're sowing the seeds for counter-revolution right there, and you're definitely not progressing towards socialism historically by taking such an approach. And of course, that hasn't proven itself to be an effective approach long term.
I'd add as well, like, imagine like whatever arms we could muster up, pales in comparison with the technology and the level of arm. Like, we're even talking about like the
AI
EU,
tank drones.
you know what I mean? Like, like the money, like the EU is developing, like, moving towards an EU army and, build up of arms, protecting the borders and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
This is serious money. Billions and billions
power.
being pumped in.
A global imperialist power.
Yeah, so
we get a few pistols.
Get a few pistols, yeah. Few
Problem solved, lads.
Yeah.
We just kick the capitalists out, boys. There we go. Socialism, grand, no hassle. All right, grand, go home. Fuck off. Yeah. What a joke.
So we have to be pragmatic, and we have to be understanding where people are at, and we want to bring them towards a revolutionary position where they feel themselves ownership of the revolution. And I think that's like, when you look at the victories of the Russian Revolution or the Cuban Revolution, Vietnam, it's that people believed in it. They had a belief in what they were fighting for. And I think that's, if I go to my work mates tomorrow and go, here lads, come on, are we ready? They're like, what? Ready for what? You know what I mean? what the fuck are you doing? Get fuck off, will you? But like, you know what I mean? And you have to take that, idea, that kind of mentality into the workplace. So this is like, the trade union movement's 700,000 strong in Ireland. How much of those 700,000 strong are willing to,
die for it,
we don't even have to go as far as die for, but to fucking go on general strike, or to have supplementary or complementary strikes with other unions and stuff like that. So, we haven't even hit that level.
Yeah.
Consciousness. So that's when we're talking about fucking low levels of class consciousness. Like, that's where we're at. So it's how do we get from where we are to where we want to be. And that's why I say it's important, for, your podcast, and, big up the Patreon, like get the funds in here because the quality is always improving, and gives you the time to develop these, and that's our task really, is to develop class consciousness.
Yeah. You are right, and we do need to be able to sort of get some sort of professional revolutionaries. We do need to get people, and we do have a number of fantastic heads in the party who are very sort of capable, very willing to take up such a task, but unfortunately the funds just aren't there, and we need to look at sort of creative ways of making that happen, and often sort of these kind of crowdfunding-y kind of things. As much as they feed into the capitalist system, in the short term, they can be useful. I mean, it's kind of a case of, the capitalists selling us the rope by which we're gonna hang. Do you know what I mean? So that is to say, lads, get over to the fucking Patreon, get over to fucking Connolly Books, and support our comrades, and support the workers' movement.
And as well, even like, the socialist voice, I think, is an important organ of the party that people should be checking out. So all these things, I really like the idea of cross-pollination between different organizations and different people, that are venturing along the same lines and are getting closer. I think that's important, because we have to build alliances. Some will go all the way, some go some other way, but it's where we want to, our ultimate goal is to fucking take over the state. Like, that is
working class state, dictatorship, proletariat, I suppose.
That's no small means, you know what I mean? That's like a huge, you know what I mean? We don't even think about it in time. It's just effort, like, there's huge effort involved. Massive. So, but we don't need to be downhearted by it. Like, take pride in our struggle, and knowing what we're doing is right. Fuck it, if there's only 5 of us, we're still right. That was one Connolly Sunday. I can't remember who it was. One of the comrades mentioned, like, I don't care if I'm if there's only 2 of us left here, we're right. You know what I mean? Well, we're on the side of the working class.
Yeah.
And I think our analysis has proven to be correct in a number of issues in terms of the water, like we mentioned earlier, the water, ownership of water, repudiation of the debt. There was another public housing being a demands that public ownership of housing, not just fucking, cost rental models or social housing.
Yeah. Joke.
It's fundamental. It's fundamental to our analysis of public ownership of the means of production and how we get from one element, whether it's housing, to factories, to different companies and stuff like that. So that's what we're trying to instill a belief that this can happen. This has happened. It has succeeded. And those that say it hasn't succeeded have an agenda against it because guess what? We're trying to take away their fucking property, their wealth. No wonder they're against it. So there we go.
Yeah, no, really good point. Look, you may know yourself, like when you're actually, if you're in sort of middle class circles, petty bourgeois circles, people who have false consciousness, it may be hard to see this, but fucking come out to fucking Tala, come out talking to people in fucking Jobstown, Fettercairn, and really working class areas that have been hit hard by capitalism, and the people want a fucking alternative. Young kids who fucking you might think are they're just hoodlums for want of a better term. They're properly fucking class conscious. They know what the fuck's going. They know they're fucked, so they're just like, fuck it. We're already getting fucked by the system, so fuck it. And so they lash back and they take shortcuts and they see whatever's in front of them. They just say, okay, grand, let's fucking do that. Because there's no fucking hope. They know that they're not going to be some lad, some cunt fucking driving around a BMW or a Mercedes in Dunleary or the posh parts, the upper class parts of Ireland. They know that's not the future that's ahead for them. They know, so they're like, fuck it, I don't care. I'm gonna sell a few bags of weed or whatever it is on the corner, and I'm gonna get mine while I'm here. And even though we may disagree with that and so on and so forth, we need to look at these people and we need to be reaching out to these people because there really is revolutionary potential even within these contexts, even within, as we say nowadays, arguably Ireland being within the imperial core, even being in this place that benefits from EU imperialism so much, do you know what I mean? There still is that revolutionary potential, and if you fucking talk to the people like out in the fucking estates, you'll understand that the people don't want fucking reform. They don't want that. They want fucking revolution. To be honest, they want fucking blood. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like there's, like we said, like Che Guevara said, like there's revolutionary blood in the veins, and I think we have a rich history of rebellion and leaders, political leaders, revolutionary leaders, and it's trying to tap into that potential. In terms of those believe in republicanism and socialism and bringing forward the ideas of republican socialism or socialism republicanism, whatever way you want to phrase it. But bring it further on to a Marxist Leninist understanding of the world, and whatever is getting them angry, tap into it. Whatever their political views are that are anti establishment, anti fucking Fianna Fáil, whatever it is, tap into it. And like I said, unless we engage with the working class, then like we're not really a party of the working class. And I think that's integral of any party that strives to be that vanguard. It's all well and good having the theory, but without having the practice and the practical application of putting that into practice, it won't really go anywhere. So
listen, this is it, and it's so important because I have been in organisations that are left wing, they're socialist, they're ultra leftist really, and they never actually really emphasised getting in touch with the working class aside from trying to secure electoral votes, aside from trying to secure the cosy positions within bourgeois parliamentary democracy that they'd already secured. When I joined up with the CPI and the CYM as well, the first fucking question I was asked is what union you're in. Do you know, what union are you a part of, and what's your role in that? You know, that's on the questionnaire, on the form. They'll ask you straight away, and they're like, get in there. What position do you hold? You know, can we exert influence through these institutions or these organizations that have access to the organized working class? And even just there with the colonial youth movement there in the last few days, talking to them, encouraging everybody to be involved with the tenants unions, CATU, CATU. What is that? Community and Tenants Union or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's really important, especially in the context of Tallaght as well. The area where I live. For people who don't know, internationally, it's one of the most impoverished. We could say towns. Really, it is. It has the population of a town, but it's on sort of the outskirts of Dublin. But it's an extremely working class area. There obviously are areas within that which are a bit nicer, and which are areas which are a bit more downtrodden. But you know, there's no fucking jobs. Everybody's fucking unemployed. Everybody's fucking selling drugs in the corners, and you know, the kids are just on the roads and they're doing their fucking wheelies. You know, pulling up their bikes, their little fucking BMXs, and just doing their little fucking wheelies, and you know, and they proceed into just selling fucking gear, selling heroin to other people on the fucking roads.
Oh yeah,
it's really sad to see. But there is a class consciousness there. There are people who actually want to transform things, and even if they haven't moved beyond an individualistic sense of liberation and freedom, there is still the seed there. And so telling people, get involved with your tenants union, get involved with, even if you're not working, maybe you can't get into the labour movement, maybe you can get into the tenants movement. That's really, really important. And that's not something that I heard with other ultra left parties or social democratic parties. Do you know what I mean? So that's one of the things that I really, really appreciate with the communist movement in Ireland, which just isn't there, unfortunately, with other organisations.
Yeah, like I said, like a lot of people, it's the alienation they feel from the system. Like they don't feel part of it. They don't feel ownership. And I think that's what we're trying to get people to have ownership, have a stake in the society that they want. And it's difficult because, like, listen, I work with, you know, teenagers or whatever that, and it's sometimes it's difficult to try and, you know, get to their level of understanding where they're at. But like you said, there is definitely a feeling of alienation, of they know something's not right with the system, but they're fed so much shite through their history books, through television, you know, pop culture and all that sort of stuff, that they kind of believe in certain things. But ultimately, like, you can see more and more as a good Leninist would say, you know, the material conditions will be the defining factor. If they don't see fucking any hope or any jobs coming, they're not going to be happy people. You know what I mean? They're going to be alienated from the society that they live in, and they'll get into more kind of criminal activity because they're like, fuck it, why don't I can make more money here than going, you know, being unemployed, or not having any prospects of getting into a trade or whatever job. So that's like,
so you may as well fucking just get involved in crime and criminality and all that sort of thing. It's the fucking you're skipping to the end, you know, this fucking, because in capitalism you're always presented this dream. Yeah, you know, you're watching music videos of people who've got fucking, you know, gold chains and big fancy cars and a nice big house, and so you want to sort of fast forward to the ending, and you're primed to desire all of the same things that the petty bourgeoisie, that the labour aristocracy and so on and so forth would move towards in their life. You know, this perfect fucking nuclear family lifestyle, and you still have the same desires no matter how poor or impoverished you may or may not be, and so you find alternative ways of getting there, and maybe that's selling a few grams of coke on the weekends, or maybe that's selling a few, you know, whatever it might be, or engaging in some sort of criminality, Because unfortunately, the material conditions have caused you to believe that that's the way forward. Do you know what I mean? You can't just go fucking blaming individuals for this as though these kids from these impoverished areas have all just coincidentally, all of them, or a good proportion of them, have decided that selling heroin is the best way forward, whereas the kids in this petty bourgeois or even bourgeois area have decided that no, I'll just get a job working in finance.
I'll go to college.
I'll go to third level education. No, not a bother.
Yeah.
No, the kids, that's just personal responsibility. No. They decided, each one of them individually decided to do that. And of course, that's the fucking illusion that we're sold as a part of capitalist hegemony, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. That's it. Like it's spot on. Like and that's what we have to try and engage is to be a voice of reason to those people that are struggling, are alienated, and to try and bring them along to it, bring them to a journey where they see themselves as, okay, I understand the fucking system. I have reason. Not that they're going to say this, but that they've reached a level of class consciousness. That sees, they know the system is rigged against them, and the only way to fight against it is struggle through unity, through organization, to principles, struggle in terms of, how we develop as a party, how we develop as individuals, as a society and a community. So listen, I think what we've, I thought our whole discussion, was along these lines of really kind of laying out that, the capitalist system, for a lot of people, it's illusory, but a lot of people don't see it, because that's the trick of the illusion, is to hide the fact that fucking you're being alienated, that you're being exploited, and that's the success of it. And we can't underestimate the success and the power and the development of capitalism, because they'll do whatever they can to maintain their power, and they have, and they will. So that's, I think I'm going to have to give them as my final thoughts, Paul, if you don't mind.
Jesus, it's nearly 12 o'clock, for fuck's sake.
I know. And I've just realised as well that I have a photo up there. I have a photo up there that I didn't actually mean to have up as my profile, but it came up.
I'll have to do a little censorship bar. Maybe Stalin will have fucking blurred it out or something. Our comrade who loves interfering with our internet here. Maybe he will have.
No, it's a different band. I should have just had a photo of me.
No, don't be worrying at all, comrade. Thanks so much for coming on. And before you head off, I mean, Jesus Christ, it's nearly 12 o'clock here in Ireland. For fuck's sake, jeez, we've been talking for over 3 hours. I swear to God, this was going to be a half an hour to 90 minutes sort of conversations in my mind, but these fucking conversations do always go on. But you have to get up for work in the morning, so come here to me. Where can people find your work? Where can they find it? Can people interact with you? Do you have any sort of public platforms that you interact with people? Maybe Twitter or Facebook or anything like that?
To be honest, I'm not one for. I'm not a social media person, so really where I you can get the book, like we're saying in Connie Books, and that ships internationally, Capitalist Illusion.
I'll pop that into the chat box again for anybody.
I write regularly for the Socialists. I write regularly for the Socialist Voice, and that's where I'll continue to write.
Can I ask you on the Socialist Voice there? That sounds very cool, but I struggle with reading long text. Is there like a YouTube channel or something maybe that we could check out?
I tell you what, Paul. There's some fabulous fucking videos being made by the Socialist Voice team. It's a production team that you know what I mean. You should definitely check out. All your listeners should definitely check out. Whoever makes those videos, they've got the talents.
He sounds like a cunt. So, I hear you loud and clear. I'll put a little link to that in
it's a good team. Yeah, it's a good team that's working there. So
I'll put a link to that in the description boxes below as well, and into the chat as well, so people can go and check that out, because there are a lot of your works in there as well, which are definitely worth checking out. The capitalist mode of destruction, and a number of other good ones. You read it. I think you may have recorded the one with Cuba, the one that the fucking Cuban it's forgetting, the Cuban ambassador tweeted it out. Maybe it was the Workers' Day, Mayday, the Mayday stream, I think.
Oh yeah, the Mayday,
the Mayday video, yeah.
Mayday video, that was cool.
Ugo.
I did the James Connolly Memorial Lecture this year. There's a PDF on the party website if people want to read that. It's kind of it's developed further thoughts in terms of that was excellent. The ongoing crisis. So that's on Socialist Voice YouTube channel, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And you know, I will recommend that people go and check that out, because that was a pain in the hole for me to fucking assemble.
I know, yeah.
Do you know, that was given. There was all right. So for people who haven't seen it, there on the Socialist Voice, there's a channel. There's a video of the Connolly Memorial Lecture from. It was what was it, the start of May or something like that. It was commemorating.
Yeah, 12th of May, I think it was.
12th of May, yeah, and commemorating all the good stuff, the rise and Connolly and his passing and all that terrible stuff. But it was given to me. There was a recording done, and it was a very, very good recording, and it was done across about 3,000 different SD cards. So I had to fucking piece all the files together in the video editing software. I had to piece them all together, but it wasn't enough that just the video was recorded separately in loads of different little clips, little 15-minute clips. It was the audio was recorded separately as well, and the audio wasn't like little 15-minute clips. The audio was like 30 minutes. So one piece of the audio might be from this clip, and it might be from the other clip, and there might be just for fucking 3 or 4 minutes of just bollocks, people talking bollocks, and so I had to sync all that sort of stuff up. And Jesus Christ, I spent about a fucking week working fucking about 12 hours a day assembling that video, and then we put it up provisionally on private on YouTube, and YouTube was like, "Sorry, mate, copyright." Copyright infringement. I was like, fuck you, Facebook.
That's why you get paid the big bucks.
Oh yeah, the big bucks here, making fucking 20 quid per month from YouTube advertising. Yeah, you know what I'm fucking loaded here. You do very, very good work over at Socialist Voice. Everybody,
I reckon I like it.
Sorry, Stalin cut you off there for a second. Just say that again.
No, I was just saying. In fairness, like your work is important, and you know, a call out to your Patreon people. You know, get supporting. And actually, listen, I think my wife has given me what you would call it, Morse code signals on the light outside, saying get the bed,
get off to me, come here to me. I might let you head, and I might buzz around with the lads in the Patreon chat for a second here. I might stick around for a little bit more. So yeah, you can do your thing.
I'm relieved.
Yeah,
I'm relieved of my duties.
You're relieved of duties, comrade. You can go and sleep well. I mean, I've got work in the morning. Listen, comrade, thanks so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. I'll stick around for another maybe 5-10 minutes for everybody in the live chat. We'll buzz around for a bit. We'll talk. There's a few little channel updates and stuff like that to talk about. Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Everybody, please go and check out The Capitalist Illusion by Eoghan O'Neill. You can find it on connellybooks.org. Excellent book. Only a short little book. You read it in an evening or two, but packed full of insight, and really, really, really useful to anybody trying to understand imperialism and capitalism, and even things like ecology and stuff like that within the modern context, because it's often, you'll read about imperialism, you'll read about capitalism, and they're sort of situated 150 years ago, and it can be hard to sort of map that onto the modern world. So listen, thanks very much, comrade. You are relieved of duties. 07, a red salute, and sleep well. And I'm so fucking sorry to you and your partner for keeping you up for fucking,
No, you're right. Listen, I enjoyed it. Like, I wasn't expecting a good 3-hour chat, so I appreciate the invite to come on and have a good chat, like, as well. Thanks to your listeners for staying tuned, and hope you've use get a few more questions so you can chat amongst yourselves, I suppose.
Listen, thanks so much, comrade. Really, really appreciate that. And we'll definitely have you on again, and we'll have to crack and we'll have the chats, and I'll see you again soon, probably in the coming days, coming weeks, whatever it might be. Comrade, sleep well. And best of luck. Have a good one. I'll talk to you again, okay? Slán go fóill. Best of luck. Take care. Okay, comrades in the chat, we've hung up the call there, so I'm terribly sorry, but our dear comrade has gone missing, and you've probably seen a little picture of Streamlabs OBS popping up on the screen instead of our comrade. So I do apologise for that. Comrades, how are you? We've got, how many people have we still got here? We still got a few people checking out the stream. 43 viewers. Jesus Christ. I've got a few little announcements to make. I'm gonna buzz on. I'm gonna pop on stream on Friday as well. So people haven't checked this out. I will pop on Friday as well, to say these sorts of things. So if you're on here now, you can probably skip the Friday stream. I'll respond to the people in the chat first. Reg Lane, is there a way to buy it as PDF? I don't think there's PDF just yet. I'll get on to the comrade on about that and see if there is a PDF that you can purchase. Maybe on, I don't know, Amazon or something like that. I know people don't like Amazon. Don't fucking slay me. Don't, hashtag cancel me or some shit like that. But I will. But I'll check out what the crack is with regards to PDFs, because a few people have been asking about it. But they do post these all over the world. You can order this. It's not a bother. You can order this down to Chile or Chile, and we'll send it down. So it's not a bother at all. So we'll do that. And you can check out the Capitalist Illusion. Comrades, it's a really, really good introduction to a lot of very complex topics. You may be struggling with capital, you may be struggling with Lenin, imperialism, you may be struggling with geology, you may be struggling with any number of things. This book will cover it in really, really good detail. And it'll also dive into the topics in a modern context, which is really something that's very, very important. The preface, there's a preface here where they talk about like COVID and the coronavirus and it really situates things and really shows you how the crises of capitalism, the booms and busts, keep replicating themselves, keep happening again and again, and so it's a really useful text, and I would really, really recommend checking it out, and especially helping out a good working class comrade, as you've seen yourselves. I mean, Jesus Christ, he gave up his own time for to talk with myself and the rest of yourselves for 3 hours and about 20 minutes to talk about this nonsense. We didn't even get through all the questions, I was going to ask him how we can shatter the capitalist illusion, how we can actually overcome all these problems. We didn't even get to that. I suppose the summary was really just to keep on debunking and continue the work of communists, keep on debunking the myth that socialism doesn't work, didn't work, and doesn't continue to work, when it does, and it did, in many different forms. It doesn't necessarily need to be the model that Stalin followed. It could be the model that Cuba has followed. It could be the model followed in Albania. Could be the model followed in Yugoslavia. Could be the model followed in any number of different countries. Could be the model followed by Gaddafi. Alright, you're probably going to cancel me for that now. But there are many different ways to approach anti-imperialism and to help the global proletarian movement move beyond imperialist, monopoly capitalists' exploitation of the proletarian. Okay, so that's brilliant. And there's lots of good stuff to be taken from that. Comrades, just a few little updates I should probably give about this channel. And I kind of need to explain a few different things. I was going to do a separate stream for this sort of stuff on Friday, but look, I'm here. I may as well jump into it now in the last 5 minutes or last 5 or 10 minutes here. So let's just jump into a quick couple of things. I probably will address these in more detail when I'm sober on Friday. I just want to say thank you so much to the Patreon supporters who have signed up to give me some support over the last couple of months. In the last couple of months in particular, especially since I started doing streams, a lot of people have signed up to Patreon, and it's absolutely incredible. I don't know how to thank you for all the support you've given me, but I really, really do appreciate what you're doing. What you're doing is literally putting food on my table. It's unbelievable. And my wife's stable, so thank you so much for that. I will need to adjust the benefits on Patreon, because on Patreon it's very much written with the idea that I would be doing video essays, because I used to do sort of 5 to 10, maybe 15-minute video essays. They'd be scripted, and they'd be, it'd take me a week or two of full-time work basically to produce these. Now it's moving more towards streams. I should explain why that is. The reason is basically that I don't have time to spend all of this effort and energy with working on streams, with working on video essays at the moment. The editing process is just taking me far too much time for this to be sustainable right now in my life, particularly with regards to CPI activity, the Communist Party of Ireland activity, and CYM, Connolly Youth Movement activity. Those sort of things, participating in the actual socialist and communist movement within Ireland, socialist Republican movement within Ireland, that does take up a lot of time. And unfortunately, I don't have enough time to dedicate to editing and going through these videos bit by bit. Because look, if you see 1 minute of video, you're looking at like a 5-minute video that I've created. 1 minute of that, just for 1 minute, probably takes about 2 or 3 hours to produce, just in terms of editing. That's not even taking into account the recording, the writing, the editing, the drafting, the sending it off to other people. So if you saw like a 4 or 5 minute video of me before, that's something that took probably about 3 or 4 weeks for me. Not 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks for me to put together for you. And that's time that I could have been used actually out on the streets, helping people, doing food drives, doing stalls, just getting involved in real life, actual socialist organising, knocking on doors, talking to people, and so on and so forth. So I think my time would be better focused on actual socialist organising, not just being one of these dickheads who fucking jumps onto the stream and tells you to fucking vote for fucking Joe Biden or some cunt like that, and actually engages in socialist practice, and helps people to understand how they too can contribute to the working class movement internationally, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the things. I also noticed that, especially with regard to like the Eugopnik stream that I did a few weeks ago, I know I got fucking pissed like I am right now, but the thing was, there was a lot of research that went into that. I had to do a lot of like reading and studying to understand the history of Yugoslavia and the breakup of Yugoslavia, and the role of the National Endowment for Democracy and stuff like that. And I realised that I was spending fucking maybe between 9 and 12 hours each day for maybe about 2 weeks studying, just to really get to grips with that situation. And that's time that I otherwise would have spent fucking editing the video, as opposed to actually deepening my knowledge so that I can discuss these issues with you in great detail. So doing streams where I am right now is probably a little bit better. It's probably a little bit better for everybody, because I'm actually giving you sort of informed opinions, which have come at it from sort of both perspectives, pro and con, and hopefully helping to deepen people's understanding of many different issues. So yes, that's why I'm streaming at the moment, comrades. It's a lot more time efficient. It allows me to study a lot more, and to give a lot more time to understanding these topics, which require an awful lot of consciousness and an awful lot of analysis and deep thinking to really get to grips with, because there's a lot of very tricky issues which internally we might have some difficulties with ourselves. You may look at Russia, you may look at China, you may look at Vietnam or something like that, and you may have some issues, and it's better to spend your time studying than to spend your time editing. So right now, as it is, making streams is probably a little bit better for me in terms of times. Now, I'll just answer a quick question here from our comrade Dante Solano. Dante, thank you very, very much. Do you speak fluent Gaelic? No, I don't. I don't speak fluent Gaelic. Unfortunately, British imperialism effectively killed the nation. It absolutely killed the Irish nation in terms of our linguistic capabilities. In Ireland, there's still little embers there, which may be reignited into a proper flame of Irish nationality. But no, in Ireland, speaking Irish, speaking Gaeilge really is how we pronounce it here. We don't say Gaelic or Irish or anything like that. We say Gaeilge. That's more a privilege of the middle classes, the petty bourgeoisie, the upper classes, and so on and so forth. Because they can afford to send their kids to private education, to private schools, to learn these things. Irish is sort of thought of as this sort of extra little sort of ornamental thing that people can learn, rather than something that's essential to your identity, to how you communicate with people, how you relate to people, and so on and so forth. Like, there is a lip service played to the Irish language. If you look at any road sign in Ireland, you'll see, okay, take the next left, okay, but then underneath that, you'll have that written in Irish in small font. Okay, so there is a lip service paid to Gaeilge and to Irish, but it's not. You don't actually need to learn Irish ever to participate fully in Irish society, and so unfortunately, the result of this is that the Irish language has been consequently co-opted by sort of ethno-nationalist fetishists who will send all their kids to Gael schools, Irish speaking schools, which are most often private, and most working people can't afford to go to them. Not to mention the fact that most working people can't speak the language, because we just need to go to whatever fucking public school there is around. We can't fucking think about sending our kid. We can't think about spending fucking €5,000 a year, €5,000 a year to spend on sending our kid to school for a year. Just so they can speak Irish, to uphold some false sort of semblance of bourgeois nationalism, which is unfortunately all too prevalent within Irish society. So even when I learn Irish now, I feel a lot of contradictions within myself, because I know this isn't first of all, this isn't the language of the working class. Working people aren't speaking Irish in Ireland. That's been quelched. That's been quelled. We need to relearn that. We need to take that back. But secondly, even the Irish that we speak has been so co-opted by bourgeois forces, by hegemonic forces, that the language doesn't even necessarily represent the Ireland of the 1500s, the 1600s, the 1700s, the 1800s, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, the Irish are speaking now was basically preserved by the Catholic Church and their hegemony as a kind of concession to the Irish people when they came in after the bourgeois counter-revolution in Ireland in the late 19-teens and the 1920s, when the bourgeois forces of the revolutionary movement within Ireland, after the revolutionary Irish Republic, which was very proletarian, very working class, very socialistic, after the counter-revolution took hold, we realised that, I say we, but really the cross-class Irish nation realised that we had no money to fund our schools, our hospitals, and so on and so forth. And so the Catholic Church is more than willing to give us a little bit of money to fund these institutions, to fund the building and construction of these institutions, providing that they could be in control of them, right? And so this happened with our schools. And so most of the schools in Ireland are run by the Catholic Church. And unfortunately, the Catholic Church has completely hijacked our educational system. And the educational system in Ireland will teach Irish through the lens of Catholicism. Okay, and I'll give you some examples of that now. When you say hello in Ireland, that means that to say that in Irish or in Gaeilge is Giagwich. Giagwich, if you translate that directly, means God be with you. God be with you. Okay? The response to that, let's say in English, how are you? Not too bad. You? The response to that in Irish to Giagwich will be Gias Murgwich. That's if someone says hello to you, you say hello back, and the response is Gias Murgwich. That is God and Mary be with you. Okay, God and literally Virgin Mary be with you. And then if you want to be a cheeky bastard, and we've joked about this all the time in Ireland, you'd say Gias Mura is Joseph Igwich. Joseph? I think it's Joseph. Anyway, it's like God and Mary and Joseph be with you. And basically, you go through the list of naming these really important Catholic figures. You go through a list of naming the apostles according to Catholicism and so on and so forth. And you can really see that Catholicism has... the Catholic Church, I shouldn't say Catholicism as a theology or an ideology, but the Catholic Church as an institution has infiltrated every single section of Irish society. Okay, to our language, to our core, to everything, to what makes us, what fucking makes us Irish, and you'll see this with art and culture and so on and so forth, where the Catholic Church helped preserve and to save the art and culture and music and poetry and so on, which upheld Catholicism, but that which didn't uphold Catholicism was conveniently forgotten, because of course British imperialist interests wanted it to be forgotten, but also the Catholic Church could be very selective with what they helped to uphold. Okay, so that's a massive issue in Ireland. That's not only in Ireland. I mean, look at so many Romance languages, so many languages that derive from Latin. Look at adios, adeus in Portuguese. I don't know how to pronounce it in Italian, adio or something like that. But when you say goodbye to somebody, basically it means go to God. Okay, you're saying go to God, so you're still seeing that, like, within our language, there's a massive influence of the Catholic Church in there. If you look even in English, look at English. If you look at goodbye, the term that we use, goodbye, which our comrade Owen would have said recently, right? Goodbye. If you trace that back, if you look at the etymology of goodbye, that originally comes from goodbye, God be with ye. God be with ye. God be with you. Okay, you can sort of like dissect that easily. I sometimes talk about this as a teacher, and I'd write it up on the board, and you'd very easily see how good became God, and by became be with you. But anyway, if you look back sort of Middle English and early sort of Modern English and so on and so forth, you'll see even English, modern language that it is still heavily influenced by religion and by Catholicism and so on and so forth. Okay, so anyway, I've gone a little rant there. This is what happens when I've had a few drinks. Reg Lane is saying, call me, I'll get you the pronunciation. Good man, comrade. My bladder's filling up again. I'm going to need to go to the Jacks. And also, I should say that my wife is trying to sleep in the next room over. And it's past midnight. It's past midnight in Dublin. I think I need to probably finish things up fairly soon. Okay, so that's what I should say. With regard to the channel, with regard to hanging on after Owen, I wanted to say thank you so much to the Patreon supporters. I want to say that with regard to this channel, there is a shift towards doing live streams. That's probably going to happen about twice a week from here on out. Not this week. I think it's just Oh no, I will. I'll do a stream today and probably stream on Friday as well. I'll talk about a few different topics and hopefully be sober during that stream. sorry about this now. Yeah, the Irish communists on YouTube. What do you expect? And one thing that I am sort of interested in engaging with and interested in floating is whether or not people might find it useful to do Marxism 101 classes on YouTube. That's something I'm interested in exploring. If there's demand for it, maybe we'll look into it in a bit more depth. But there's a lot of confusion out there on YouTube. People don't understand basic concepts, what certain terms mean, what socialism means, what the Marxist perspective, what the Marxist-Leninist perspective is on certain issues. And I'm sort of toying with the idea of maybe doing some live stream classes going through socialism. Now I'll need to prepare that. It'll take me probably months and months and months to properly put it together. But if people are interested in classes, then let me know. Get in touch with me. We can make them happen. Now I know there are some good comrades. We have, for example, Socialism 101 in the chat there. A good Marxist, Leninist, Maoist perspective on a lot of these issues, which is very, very useful, even though I may disagree with Gonzalo, so on and so forth. But very, very, there's a lot of good educational stuff there. But it might be useful to have some live streams where you can sort of interact with these things. You know, you can sort of toss ideas back and forth to me, and say, you know, what's the difference between value and use value? What's the difference between exchange value and use value? What do they mean by socially necessary labour time? How does that change with regard to productive forces and development of technological innovation and so on and so forth? Okay, so maybe it's useful, maybe it's not. I don't want to repeat things that other people have already said, but if people are interested in Marxism classes, then please let me know. Maybe leave a comment below this video, because, you know, I'm a little bit tipsy at the moment and I probably won't remember what I said right now, but leave a little comment below, and just let me know that, you know, just say, I don't know, Marxism 101, yes, and then, you know, we can make that happen. Because, you know, anything I can do to help advance the workers' movement, I'm willing to do that. And yeah, listen, comrades, that's pretty much it. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I would answer a couple of questions if people had them. I'm approaching nearly 10k subscribers, which is absolutely crazy. I can't believe that I'm getting there now. And I would do like a 10k Q&A or something like that, but we do Q&As all the time. Like, these streams are built around Q&As, so it seems a little bit irrelevant at this stage. So I think we'll probably wrap it up there. A little bit. Okay, I'm just having a look at the chat here. I'm just reading the chat. I don't need to do this live. Comrades, thank you so much. I'll do a little shout out before we finish up, and then we're gonna go to sleep, because it's fucking 12:15 where I am here. So thank you so much to Choking on O'Shez61. Thank you so much to Socialism 101, K-Lux, by another name there, Chicken Spawn, Burek, Alana Montero. Alana, you're always in these chats. Thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate the ongoing support. The Noble Sufferer, Jessidiah, thank you so much. Ian McShay, Maximilian Robespierre. Max, I haven't forgotten about you. I will be doing that video on EU and imperialism and the idea of the European Union as an empire and so forth, and so on and so forth. So don't be worrying, that will be addressed, but that requires a full probably 1 or 2 hours, maybe 3 or 4 hours with the way these streams go on, to get into properly. But we will do that in early September. Okay. Thank you so much to Buric, Buric. Who else we got? Dante Solano. Good to see you, comrade. How are you getting on? Level 9. Good to see you, comrade. Red Chilean, excellent, comrade. Also, Red Chilean also is making YouTube videos now. It's really good stuff, really good principles. Anti-revisionist stuff, but probably not anti-revisionist in the sense that you're thinking of it now, you know, because in the West we have a certain idea of what anti-revisionism means. But I suppose following on the tradition of Albania, but also being critical of that movement as well. So really, really good principle Marxist-Leninist takes there. So do give a follow to our comrade Reg Lane. Who else have we got here? Red Fenian Punk. Cheers, comrade. How about saying Saoirse Gwitch instead? Saoirse Gwitch, absolutely. Freedom to us all. If I ever have a daughter, her name will probably be Saoirse. That means freedom in Irish. Cheers, Natalie S. And yeah, so listen, comrades, thanks so much. I'll see. Is there anyone else in the chat there? ZB, thanks very much. I appreciate you tuning in. And Jesus, it's been nearly 4 hours, so comrades, I need to go to sleep. 12:15 here. Thanks so much. Love and solidarity, and I will see probably some of yous on Friday. The Partisan, how are you getting on? Solidarity, comrades. And yeah, I'll see some of you on Friday. Take care, comrades. Best of luck. Love and solidarity.